here's
Okay, we are recording.
text them the link, and they should be able to click right on it. They may or may not.
All right, Sean, we're going to start now. Okay, hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Ann Kloss, and I welcome you to the City of Clyde Hill Council meeting for Tuesday, June the 14th, 2022. We are, for the first time, doing this as hybrid. We are now strolling back into a new normal. Very excited. So some of us are on site, and we have some of our residents that are also here on site, and then we have a good portion of you that are still virtual, which is no problem at all. We appreciate this, and we'll just ask for a lot of grace tonight as we kind of look at the systems and make sure we're not crossing technology and creating weird sounds and noises. So we practice, but let's just see what the curveballs throw at us. So thank you for your patience as we work through this. Courtney, how are we with our roll call?
All council members are present.
That's wonderful. I will ask those where you are, and in here we'll stand and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's nice having a whole flag to look at. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so you have the information in the hybrid meeting notification. At this point, really, especially when we have public comment and we have a couple of sessions tonight for public hearings, is to kind of get our attention, and here, raise your hand, and then also online in that little reactions option at the top of your header, there's a, you click on that, you can see there's a raise the hand function. If that's difficult, not working, you're struggling, just come off mute and get our attention. But otherwise, I appreciate if you stay on mute just to kind of minimize background noises and any disruptions on that. And I know, and I can see a good portion of you have been faithful followers and observers of our process for a while. We are all pretty good in season, so thank you for that. Moving on then on our agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda, considering any changes or modifications, additions, deletions. So I see Councilmember Hakomovich. What would you like to say?
I would like the council to consider adding an item ahead of item 5.1, topic discussion on how to work better together.
All right, that is your proposal. Any other changes or proposals? You? No? How about other council members? Councilmember Moore?
Don't we have to deal with this first?
I didn't know, did you have a change or a proposal or amendment to the agenda?
Yes, I would like to, in light of the fact that I understand there's a large number of petitions that have been delivered to City Hall today, I'd like to add an agenda item to discuss
oh, there's Lisa.
Whether we should put something on the ballot in November to change the form of government. And I would propose that we put that on at the end of section 5. So it's after 5.3.
You want that after 5.3?
Yeah, I'm not looking at it right now, but whatever the last one is.
Oh, okay, so 5.5.
5.5. After 5.4, yeah, it would be 5.5.
This is the mayor. Whoa.
Okay, and I just kindly remind everybody, if you, unless you're a council member, if you can please make sure you're on mute unless it's your turn during some form of public comment or hearing, just to minimize background noise. Council, I might just consider we do need to make sure we get items 9 and 10 done, which require a public hearing, opening it up in case the public have anything to add or comment on. I don't know if you're comfortable having it at section 9 or 10, or if you would entertain moving that up after and before 5.0, just so we can get through those items.
I feel comfortable with it in section 9 and 10. I
Leave it
can't
in
speak
9
for
and
anyone else in council.
Other council members?
I'm good with how we have it. It's fine.
Okay,
Same.
we'll go through.
Yep.
All right, so we're adding a 5.0, working better together is what Councilmember Hakamovich would like, and a 5.5 discussion on the petition. Any further discussion? So with that, may I have a motion to accept the amended agenda?
So move, Muramoto.
Is there a second?
Second, Jones.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, we have our agenda. Thank you. Now we move on to section number 3. This is the opportunity for some brief comments to the city council. And we do have public hearings on the stormwater and the TIP. We would kindly ask if you would save any comments on those 2 topics for when we open it up at those sections, which are now remain at section 9 and 10. I'm certainly not going to pull you out and stop you if you so choose to say something here, but I just would prefer if you would wait for your comments then. Otherwise, we sort of ask for around a 3-minute, just in case we have a fair amount of people. I don't know if everyone is planning to speak, but that would enable everybody to have an opportunity. And when you do come forward, please just say your name and just verify if you're a resident of Clyde Hill. I don't need your address. I just want a verification that you are a resident or not, would be great. So I will kind of go back and forth and manage this to see where we have. I have a hand up on screen, which is Lisa Slipka.
Hi, my name is Lisa Slipka, and I am a resident of Clyde Hill. And I'm here this evening on behalf of your friends, neighbors, and the people that you represent to discuss the petition to reorganize city government from mayor, city administrator to council manager. Around 6 weeks ago, I started a drive to collect signatures with the intent of asking the city to put an initiative on the ballot for fall 2022. The number of signatures required to get on the ballot is 10% of the number of ballots cast in the last election, which would have been 98 signatures. Through the efforts of many people in the community, with a shout out to Steve Heller for all his hard work, I currently have 150 signatures in hand and was approached by another neighbor this afternoon asking to sign the petition. As I discovered today when dropping off the petition to City Hall, there is some ambiguity surrounding the process to get onto the ballot. But getting on the ballot through the petition process and having King County validate signatures is not the only way to get on the ballot. It is possible for the city council to pass a resolution instructing the city attorney to draft language for an initiative that would go on this fall's ballot, so November 2022. And I would encourage the city council to take advantage of the momentum in the community and to ask the city attorney now to draft a resolution so that we can move forward with allowing the community to have the opportunity to decide how they would like to be governed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the room here that would like to speak? I'm just making sure.
On this topic?
Any topic.
Oh, any topic.
Yeah. And if you do, I'd probably have you come up to the podium just so that everybody has a chance to. Would you like to come and make a comment?
Oh, well, I guess I would have a question first.
Okay.
I'm here because I've heard about that there's going to be a change in management of the river management.
Okay. So you're welcome to make a comment to that if you would like.
It's now the appropriate time.
Yes, and would you mind coming up here just so that the online viewers have a chance, and just say your name and if you're a resident.
Okay.
Thank you. And Lisa, your hand is still up. I don't know if you intend to speak again. But just, okay, your name, and are you a resident of Clyde Hill?
I have 44 years.
Wonderful. And your name?
Dick Perriel.
Dick, thank you. Please go ahead, 3 minutes or so. What's your comment or questions or?
Well, I really had a brief encounter with what I think is going to be a change in how the views, in particular hedges or trees, I would imagine, are pruned and governed.
Okay.
Particularly regarding a view.
All right.
So I've lived here for 44 years. I get up every day and pinch myself when I look out and see the view that I have. I just feel that I've been somehow blessed to be able to live on our property and enjoy the view that we do have. So when I heard that there's perhaps a change in how that the trees and hedges are managed, I definitely want to weigh in on the side that as it is right now, I think it's managed appropriately. Because I'm surrounded by hedges, which I share with my neighbors, and we manage the height of those hedges. I would hate to think that someone could perhaps buy my neighbor's property or whatever and be able to let that hedge block my view. So, and I'm sure that if I talk to most of my neighbors around me, they would be in agreement regarding the view. So,
All right.
that's what I'm hearing.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions or?
Well, that's fine. We have just like a half a minute left. So any further comment? And you're welcome to come up and make a comment. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I'm not completely clear on what it has even been proposed. I briefly kind of read through an email, but I've got to tell you that 44 years, Clyde Hill's been working fantastic, in my opinion. I don't think anything needs to be radically changed, or particularly the management of trees and hedges regarding views. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Would you like to come up and have a wait? Okay, no worries. Online, we have Aubrey Solheim.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. My name is Aubrey Solheim. My husband, Spencer Nurse, and I and our family have lived here in Clyde Hill for over 70 years. And I'm speaking tonight on behalf of both Spencer and I. We are deeply troubled by the conflicts of interest that are represented by Councilmember Hamakovich, holding a council position to try and achieve personal benefits for himself and his property. Residents were amazed that Hamakovich was able to be sworn in as a council member with code violations on his property and owing the city $8,000. He ran on a platform of transparency, yet has not disclosed these conflicts to residents and to voters. I'd like to give you several examples of the conflicts residents in the community see. We were recently shocked to see an email from Hamakovich using his council email address, pressuring staff to add speed bumps to the deficiency list in Title 17. Hamakovich is using his position as a council member to pursue a private benefit to get speed bumps removed from the private lane on which he lives. Second, he started his own newsletter and has mentioned enforce or enforcement over 90 times. 90. Why? Hamakovich has an outstanding complaint against his property for installing a no turnaround sign on Clyde Lane, for blocking the turnaround that has existed for 40 to 50 years, for impeding access to the fire hydrant that protects about a dozen homes in the community, for no visibility of the fire hydrant from 150 feet, and for installing a curvature in Clyde Lane, which is different from what the plan specified. Hamakovich was declined a gate permit that would have blocked the neighborhood fire hydrant and turnabout. He subsequently sued the city for declining the gate permit, resulting in the $8,000 outstanding bill owed to the city. Does Homakovich expect taxpayers to cover this expense? And now he has been drafting the council packet rules and guidelines, trying to change codes and enforcement and conflict rules. The very rules he is subject to in complaints and enforcement actions. Again, he's using his role as a council member to pursue a private benefit. How is this not a direct conflict of interest and abuse of his power? Finally, in today's council packet, Homakovich wants to put a stop on some code enforcement. There are currently 4 complaints. One of those is against him. He wants to halt enforcement for his own benefit. The conflicts of interest are obvious. He would have financial gain to his $10 million property value by cutting off the turnaround at the end of Clyde Lane
Mayor, time
that
check.
existed for
You're
decades.
at 30 seconds.
The potential for corruption is high as he inserts himself in the process to secure special privileges. Self-policing does not seem to be working to uphold ethics and is very unfortunate the city has chosen not to enforce the code for over 2 years. We are asking city staff and council members to prevent those conflicts. Homakovich has to
Please
vote.
complete.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband. I just have a few more.
I need 30 seconds. Time is up. Please complete your sentence.
Okay, thank you. We are asking staff and council to uphold the health, the welfare, and the safety of residents, code enforcement, and prevent elected officials from securing special privileges and abuse of power. We're asking you guys to stop the abuse of power for personal gain prior to any further corruption happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your
Thank
neighbor's
you.
name is Hakamovich. That's how it's pronounced. Just FYI.
It's a difficult name. I can appreciate that's hard. Pam Phillips, and Aubrey, your hand is still up. You can take your hand down. Pam Phillips. You're still on mute, Pam. Pam, are you?
Can you hear me
There you go.
now? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So first of all, I would just like to start by saying I personally would like to thank Councilmember Hakamovich as both a citizen and as a council member. I greatly appreciate his newsletters. That's filling a hole that I feel the city doesn't do. I get a newsletter from Medina, which does a fantastic job of communicating what's going on within the city, and I believe that's missing in Clyde Hill. I think Councilmember Hakamovich has done a great job of doing his best to provide that without bias. Now, my name, I'll start this. My name is Pam Phillips, and I do live in Clyde Hill. And I'm calling in from out of town, and I'm doing so to this meeting because I care very deeply about Clyde Hill. This is the community that I have chosen to live in and to raise my family. First, I want to state for the record that I support the proposal to bring the council manager form of government to the ballot. Currently, there is little, if any, oversight of administration. They're only accountable to the mayor. In addition, the mayor has sole authority to make and enforce decisions without council or public input. In the proposed council manager government, the mayor becomes a council member and decisions are made by consensus of the council. This would provide significantly better transparency and groupthink decision-making that would better benefit the citizens of Clyde Hill. I'd also like to point out that this grassroots proposal is the result of many citizens expressing displeasure in the recent actions of our city administration. This is most definitely not the reaction of a few disgruntled people, as has been suggested. The numerous poor decisions and CYA by city administration have negatively impacted families and even whole communities, and is evident by the number of individuals who have supported the proposed government change and signed the petition in only a handful of weeks. The community seeks better transparency and staff that supports what is best for our residents, not just what the letter of the law is. Because heaven forbid that somebody is caught buying meat on Sunday, which happens to be illegal in the state of Washington. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pam. You can lower your hand. Anybody else in here? Making sure. And just keeping an eye on the screen in case somebody else would like to step forward. Thank you. I see Larry Lurksman, hand up.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, English is my second language, as I was born in Ukraine, former Soviet Union. But my name is, again, Larry Lurksman. I'm a resident here at Clyde Hill. My wife and I love raising our 3 daughters here in Clyde Hill. And as a real estate guy, I also had an opportunity to build a few beautiful homes in our neighborhood. I would like to share my most recent experience dealing with the city in August of 2021. Per code, I had to remove an established 200-foot living hedge and replace it at a cost of $30,000. I went to the city and asked if there is a way to keep it, but the answer was no. If we allow, they said to me, if you allow to keep it, then we will have to allow everybody to do the same. It's only fair. So I replaced it without making any waves. I followed the rules, and the rules are fair. Now, did Scott Moore, our city council person, follow the rules when per code he had to replace his hedge during $1 million remodel? No. It took 7 years to resolve his hedge, including a harassment investigation against the city administrator involving the police, according to public records. And then there is councilperson Dean Hachimovich, who fought and lost the permit battle to put a gate at the end of Clyde Lane. He still owns to this day money for the appeal. I also have a direct question to Dean Hachimovich from my wife Megan and I. For what reason do you request my personal property permit file on June 3rd? Is this a form of harassment? I ask. Yeah, I would like to know. As a resident and a voter, I see all this as self-serving conflict of interest and abuse of power. People, please read the agenda and connect the dots. What's happening here? If this petition is successful, I predict things are going to spiral out of control for no reason except for the benefit of 2 council members and their handful of friends, supporters. The city of Clyde Hill is not perfect, but to rip the government apart and potentially cost the taxpayers as much as $1 million to restructure, especially at this time when our economy is going down into uncharted territory. Keep in mind, the city only has $3 million in their coffers for a rainy day, so a third would be wasted. How come this petition does not cover the potential costs to us, the taxpayers? It's comical to me. The petition mentions the city of Medina as an example of a good government structure. And most of you know, Medina is virtually bankrupt.
Finish your thoughts, Larry. Thank you.
I will finish. This is a textbook bully power grab. Please leave our amazing city in peace. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Next hand up is Arena.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I also would like to express my strong opposition to the petition to change the structure of the government. I believe it's imperative to have separation of power. Otherwise, it's going backwards from the democratic process and reminds me of the country that I left and the reason why I left it. So I encourage citizens to actually look into it and not sound blindly and pay attention and be informed. Also, I'd like to mention that being present lately during some city council meetings, I've been appalled by conduct of some council members towards the mayor and city administrator. I would like to remind the council members that we voted and elected this mayor, and we expect her to be able to do her job and not being bullied for it. It's very frustrating what's going on, and actually, I'm surprised of behavior of some people, and I wish the mayor is a big girl and stands up for herself. She's doing a great job. Thank you.
Mayor, I believe the protocol is that people need to give their name and address before they make a.
Sorry, no, it's
I'm
name.
I'm sorry. Irina Kalinkovich, and I'm a resident of Clyde Hill.
Thank you.
Street address.
There is no need for the street address, but I know why you're interested. It's Clyde Lane, the infamous Clyde Lane.
Thank you. Yeah, you'll see on section 3, we only asked for name and resident of Clyde Hill. That was under the advice of parliamentarian rules, that it helps to increase participation if one does not feel like they have to give out their personal address. So that is why that's been changed for quite a while. Irina and Larry can put your hands down if you are done speaking.
I just want to, if you need my address, I'm all welcome to give
No,
you.
we just need resident. You're fine. Thank you, Larry. Pavel, your hand is up. And you're still on mute.
My apologies. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm in Germany right now.
Okay.
And on a business trip here and working, helping evacuating people in Ukraine all the time. But just feeling how important this meeting is, I could not miss it. It hurts me to see what is happening to the government and what is happening to our city right now. Even I echo everything that was said by Aubrey and by Irina and by Larry. And also, even during this meeting right now, look, Scott Moore was trying to interrupt a couple people because he thinks he knows the rules. But just let's go back a couple months ago when we had to listen to Scott Moore in the middle of the meeting, raising his personal issues, reading his personal email, and asking the mayor to respond. It wasn't a public time. It was in the middle of the meeting when he brought it up. And Mayor, he asked you to respond at that time. Did he know the rules that it wasn't the right time to do it? I'm also appalled, and I encourage everybody, actually, please follow what's happening in the city. Talk to the city administrator, talk to the city staff, actually. See what kind of work environment they have right now. The city is turning to the point of maybe no way back. So I encourage everybody. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit tired right now. It's 4 o'clock again, 4 o'clock in the morning. But I encourage you to pay attention what's happening. Pay attention to the couple city council members, what they're doing. We have a lot more information that could be coming out that we are not going to disclose at this time. But I encourage the rest of the council members, please remember that we voted and elected you separately. You don't have to vote 5-4-2. Please keep in mind, you're working for us. We elected you. And Mayor, thank you for standing up for us. Thank you for standing up for yourself. And please continue your job. And to the city administrator, I'm sorry what you've been going through. To the city staff, I'm sorry that you've been going through, but people are watching. People are watching from inside the city. People are watching from outside the city. And thank you for everything you're doing. And please, don't give in. Please continue fighting. Thank you.
Thank you. Pavel, appreciate that. Irina and Pavel can put your hands down, and Robbie has a hand up.
Sure. So my name is Frank Tonkin. I go by Robbie. I'm a Clyde Hill resident, resident of 43 years. I have 6 kids. Oldest is 15, and I have a new 1-year-old. I am here to voice my opposition to the petition to change the form of government. I think Medina was mentioned as a model form. I feel like it was mentioned earlier, the significant debt that Medina is facing and near bankruptcy. I think the Clyde Hill form of government has worked and served the area very well. I too have a similar story of we built a new home and had a permit decision that I challenged and ultimately lost, owing over $23,000. But I felt like that decision, while I lost, was administered fairly. And I think that the Clyde Hill form of government helps ensure that things like that are administered fairly. And so I just want to voice my support for the current form of government and support for the city administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Robbie.
Well, I think you said his name was Frank underneath Robbie Tonkin's Teams log on, so thank you. I'll pause and see if there's other hands that may go up to speak. Okay, I see Lynn's hand is up. And Lynn, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Resident of Clyde Hill on 98th Avenue for about 60 years. I also am in favor of keeping our current government and having the freedom to vote for our mayor. And then I just have a question, and I don't know how a question might be noted or answered during this council. But when was the Board of Adjustment switched to an outside consultant?
It was changed to the Planning Commission at least 4 years ago. We'd have to, if you write us or let us know name or email or number, we can get you information back.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's it. Just want to keep our current government up and running. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lynn. And you can lower your hand. All right, anyone else? I truly appreciate everyone's participation. And oh, we got another hand, Megan.
Hi, this is Megan Smith, a resident of Clyde Hill, and I'm raising my family here in this beautiful city. I too am against this petition, and I hope that the council members are listening and our fellow residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Megan. And you can lower your hand as well. Comfortable with the pause. So I wish again to thank the residents for observing in person, online, listening, staying informed, asking questions, making your comments. That's what makes this whole process important and relevant. And there is a lot going on, and now is a really good time to stay connected. So thank you for that. So at this point, I will move on in the agenda. So we'll close the public comment section for right now. And there's always study sessions and other city council meetings in the future. So please stay in tune to that. Moving on to the agenda, section 4, there are no presentations this month other than what's embedded in the topic. Okay, so we were asked, you guys approved the new 5.1. Councilmember Akamovich, she wanted to talk about working better together.
I will defer and ask Councilmember Friedman to start, please.
Okay, is we okay, Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, great. So I want to make it clear that these comments are mine. They're solely mine, and I'm open and welcome any and all responses from the council and others after I make my complete statement. And I'm going to read from my statement here. I've been disappointed in the ability of the administration to listen to council. I believe this is a major cause of the ineffectiveness of this council and the administration to effectively work together. Now, I understand the council's role is to make policy, and I also fully understand the administration's role, including the mayor, it's to administer policy. That's very clear to me, and I appreciate the distinction, but the process doesn't work when council's views on policy are not considered or acknowledged. So in my view, in my role as a council member, my goal is to do what I believe is right for the community. I thoroughly enjoy serving the community, and I enjoy trying to make this city better for the residents. So I review, I take time to study, I listen to residents, and I take this under advisement, and I try to do the right thing. From my standpoint, I see our views at council as receiving from the administration and ignoring head nod or being kicked down the road or being pushed along hoping it will go away. It's not productive when the administration is simply checking the box. I'm looking for acknowledgement, I'm looking for discussion, and I'm looking for some understanding of the position outlined. And at best, I get reasons why we can't do something as opposed to coming to an understanding of the position or an understanding of the problem or issue that is being mentioned. If the opposite were the case, in which we have a real discussion together, it's my opinion we will find common ground for constructive action that benefits our community. The packet this week exemplifies my frustration. Notwithstanding the receipt of the informative information that we received from Public Works earlier this week that allows us time to review before the public meetings, this packet doesn't show the administration is listening. Note the sections on enforcement in the budget process. They lack acknowledgement or constructive direction. So I want to feel we are always successful when we work collaboratively. So I welcome comments and suggestions from the council or others.
Thank you, Steve. Other comments from council? Councilmember Moore?
Well, I agree with everything that Councilmember Friedman just said. I'm certainly frustrated with the lack of collaboration that we've received from the administration on a whole bunch of different areas. I'm not going to list a bunch and go and complain, but I think the fact that 150 some odd or 150 signatures were delivered today to City Hall to change the form of government pretty much speaks for itself in terms of the level of dissatisfaction in this community. Now, granted, we heard from 8 or 10 people tonight that seem to have an agenda and want to like things the way they are and don't want to change it. But 150 Clyde Hill citizens and voters have said they want to change the form of government from what it is today to council manager. I think because many people are frustrated with how the city is being run. So in that sense, I think Councilmember Friedman is right that we've got an issue here, and I'd like to see it addressed. We're going to get to that next subject shortly, so I'll stop there.
All right, Councilmember Jones.
Sure. Councilmember Friedman, thank you for your comments and your interest to find ways to make the council and administration work better together. I'm 100% for trying to work together to involve both of us to make this process improve and get better results on both sides. So I'm all for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Komovich.
I want to agree strongly with both Councilmember Jones and Councilmember Friedman regarding ways to ways to find a way to work together. I want to offer a couple of nuances here. I think that there are examples of great work on the part of the administration, and I think it's important to call those out and note those. And I think that there are great examples of collaboration between council and parts of the administration. I think that Clyde Hill's Police Department and Clyde Hill's Department of Public Works serve under strong leaders who are effective and consistent in their communication, in setting expectations, and planning work, and then working their plan. I think those are some winning things that we can point to. I want to focus and reaffirm on Councilmember Friedman's comments around whether feedback from the community or the council is being acknowledged or listened to, or if there's a demonstration of progress based on that feedback. And I think that I share that concern with him. Thank you.
Councilmember Muramoto.
I would like to concur with the other councils. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Friedman, and others that weighed in. It's not clear to me what exactly the solution is. I think we seem to be kind of reach a consensus on maybe the fact that we're not communicating. I would like to suggest and maybe open the discussion up for some type of a retreat, maybe a facilitated session to talk about how we move forward from here. It's not clear to me what the structure of that is. I think there's a lot of things that are broken, and I don't know if that's a mediator, if that is potentially legal counsel that can assist in that facilitation. But I do get a clear sense of urgency that as a council and administration, we need to better understand what's the root cause and how best to move forward. Otherwise, we will be, at best, a stagnant council. At worst, a council that is taking the city in what I believe is just a complete road to chaos. So thank you all. I hope that we can move forward on this.
Councilmember Friedman?
Yeah. I want to make it clear, this is not about a petition. This is about collaboration and working between our groups. I respect the desire of people to have a position one way or the other. I respect the people who have signed the petition and wish to bring something to a vote. I'm not taking a position. My goal is that. And I really appreciate the comments because in many respects, this is kind of my own cry for help. I think we can figure out how to work better together. And I wanted to verbalize my frustrations because I think we have an opportunity. There's always an opportunity to improve it. So.
Councilmember Muramoto put out there a notion of whether we would have some sort of facilitated, mediated retreat, or our city attorney, Tom Brubaker, helping to wage in on the discussions. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I welcome anything that will help us all work better together.
Councilmember Jones?
I totally agree. I think that's a great idea and would work to make that happen.
Councilmember Komovich?
I think there is consensus about having that kind of discussion. I'm not sure at what point you would like to weigh in on any of what you have heard here.
Yeah. And just so that the person, whoever's the Clyde Hill guest, this is not a moment for resident contribution or comment. That section was closed under Section 3, just so that you know. I feel that with all the recent events that have been going on, that everybody is trying very hard to regain traction and to prioritize the working list The working list seems to be constantly reprioritized after every meeting and almost every single day with the barrage of emails that we get in trying to say, now I need this report, now I need this information. And we have so few resources within the city to accomplish this. I know it sounds like an excuse, but when you're faced with the city administrator and an assistant city administrator whose role is pretty much 90% dealing with public records requests and is unable really to do a lot of the legwork and the busy work, we are not getting our workloads done at a pace and an efficiency that we have been used to and would like to do. So we're talking internally in terms of how we can try to control the incoming so that we don't get derailed and can just say, okay, today I'm working on this project, and unless it's a burning bush, I will, I'm going to stay focused on that because I hear you and I'm with you. And I know the staff here, Dean, Rolla, and others, they know I come in there and I'm asking about where are we with these projects, and they're feeling at arms in terms of they're not making as much progress as they want to. And so we have put in for 2 interns to hopefully come and help be additional busybodies to help us with. And I would like to lay the seedling that I would like to go to post on a second assistant, a city administrator. And we would be prepared to talk about what that would mean in terms of FTE and position and budget at our July budget planning meeting, because I need city council to give approval and input on that piece. But we got a lot of work to do and I need people to get it done. And, even putting out requests for quotes on certain functions that we know we want to get going on, I got to get somebody to sit down and put those RFQs together, to send it out, to triage the incoming, to set up the interviews, and then get people to review it in order to say, we pick you, let's go to work. All of that sounds easy enough, but it takes logistics and time and resources. So I just want to let you know that, prioritizing and getting the work done is one thing. And I hear the level of frustration that we're not able to make as fast headway as possible. But like I said, we are strategizing internally how we can do a better job with that. I believe that what you'll hear tonight is our earnest attempt to do a better job at listening, which is what Councilmember Friedman had started off with. I thought that the session that we had just this past week, which you'll see reflected here in a moment on the agenda with the Land Use Committee, really, I thought, worked well to find that common ground and to discuss our recommendations, make sure we had a good understanding so that we can come forth now tonight and present that. I felt really good. And I think that you'll find what we've talked internally and what Sean's prepared to talk about when we have the enforcement discussion, hopefully also will be heartfelt with our intent to collaborate. I want to give credit, and I'll probably reinforce it in a moment with Councilmember Jones, but he had perfect timing last week. And it was almost like sometimes you have to hear something in a different way, like almost a liaison or interpreter. And you go, now all of a sudden, aha, now I get it. Or it was just enough of a discussion that it made better sense. So I think if we can find that common ground, I think we'll find ourselves being able to push through and getting a lot more things accomplished. So I know it's a long statement, but I felt a need to kind of make those comments.
So I just want to play back to make sure I understand what I heard. There's a lot there.
Yep.
I think that a large part of it was because priorities keep changing, the administration is not being able to get work done. That seemed to be the the first top key bit that you're trying to respond to the feedback with. Do I have that right?
Yeah, it's hard to get traction when the priorities are constantly changing. Yes.
Okay, so I'm sure that later on during this meeting, we'll talk about the priorities constantly changing. I have a question for Councilmember Friedman, which is, does that reflect the feedback that you gave? Because I think the feedback you gave had to do with something else.
What I'm looking for is, as council, and council, in my opinion, is generally in consensus with the issues that we are concerned about and that we're addressing. Council is coming up with concepts or issues that we want to discuss. What I'm looking for is an understanding of the issues, not necessarily as we fully agree. I want information back from administration so that we can work together to assist. What I'm also interested in is if the administration is having problems accomplishing things, as you were discussing getting the work done because of staff, I want to help. I want to do my part as a council member to give you the tools to make sure we get the work done that needs to be done. I understand the issue of people and resources. I'm not clear on whether we agree that something should be on that list or not. And what I feel like is when council has something that is important enough to put on that list, that we come to an agreement on the priority and the resources you might need to do so. That might not mean that we can accomplish something immediately. It might mean there are other issues that are being taken along the way. But at least we would all both agree that this is something we want done. And that's where we're not getting to.
Councilmember Muramoto, were you going to add something more? I'm not sure if I was.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you, Mayor. I get it. I think that, and this is maybe a plea to council also, that let me back up. Number one, I fully 100% back the need for additional staff, be it interns, be it full-time staff. Budget consequences, let's talk about that. I understand that there will be, but if you need additional staffing, to me, it is a priority that we get the staff that the city needs to move forward. That's item one. Item two, I think maybe a little bit of a plea to council is not to randomize staff and administration, so that we can, in fact, allow them to get things done. I think that as a council, maybe we, I think we have a pretty good consensus as a council about what our priorities are. Maybe that's not true, and maybe we talk one-on-one about where we are. I would like to start perhaps with, let's look at agendas for the council, for the next council session, for the next study sessions, and try to focus the discussion and the work of the administration on those things, and also the other things that we've set forward, like TIP, and budget, certainly our comp plan. Those are things that we absolutely have to get done. And so I think there are big rocks that we need to allow them to get done, and rather than randomize them, maybe we try to keep our comments and our agenda as a council and our priorities focused, aligned, so that the administration is not being randomized. That's my ask. Thanks. Off my soapbox.
So if I'm hearing things correctly, I'm hearing two things, because I threw that thing out there. We'll be prepared in the July budget session to have more details around the resources that we need remainder of this year and possibly into the future budget. It's perfect timing anyways, and will be more enlightening. I'm also hearing and sensing that you're willing to set up some level of a retreat, mediated, that we can get more into root cause and some very tactical steps that we can do that will move us into a better job of listening, collaborating, and responding. And other things that might pop in there, such as how we reprioritize or how someone's personal ask might be accommodated or not. We can all get into that later. Does that sound all right? If so, I'd like to move on in the agenda. Yeah. All right. Moving on to 5.1 is code enforcement. I would like to thank Council Members Friedman and Hakomovich. You spent an enormous amount of time in researching and putting thoughts down. You can see in the agenda several very well thought out addendums, if you will, and it's extraordinarily helpful. I know it was probably painful and obviously time consuming in your have to do that, but it is also very helpful. And the city staff, we've been talking about that, and I really was pleased with the internal communications that our Public Works Director, Sean, has had. I know he's been working with Sarah, who handles a lot of the content as well. And I'd like to turn it over to Sean, who would see if we are hearing the need and kind of what we're hoping to kind of look towards as a response and maybe next steps.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. This is material that's not in the packet? This is
response
new?
to the material in the packet, right? So we're probably going to be speaking more towards the, which one is it? That one pager. Because that one pager is what we had the most hands-on, from complaint report to enforcement report, I think is the one that we spent a lot more time. If you would indulge Sean, let's see if what he is able to kind of feed back to you with what we think we hear and what you're asking for, and if this might be appropriate for you. Enforcement policy.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Is this presentation in the packet?
I think that Courtney added it.
Courtney
and
added
republished it. Yeah.
Yes, Courtney. And Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong.
When was it added?
I hit refresh at the start of the meeting. I don't see it.
Shortly after 6 o'clock.
Okay. Because we want you to be able to pull it up on your screen.
I don't think it's appropriate. This is like
Scott, it is appropriate if we're wanting to have a discussion about this topic and whether city staff is what we're proposing to do as a result of this.
Okay, well, Mayor, we had a draft agenda for this meeting that was sent out about 10 days ago. This presentation was not in it. It wasn't even mentioned. I'm looking at a copy of the agenda that I opened earlier today, which looks the same as it looked yesterday, and there is no presentation on here.
No, there isn't.
If you want to have better working relationships with council, you can't do this kind of stuff where you ambush us with things that we haven't had a chance to review and think about. I mean,
Well,
it's just
about ambushing is getting 4 new agenda items on a Friday afternoon before publishing the packet and expecting us to be able to respond to that. Sean was busy with the stormwater, and he was busy with the tip, and he spent all today to be able to respond.
But we have a full agenda.
You have questions and issues in these addendum asking city staff, what is your response to this? What are you going to do? So I'm happy if you want to open it up for discussion, and we'll be prepared then to share with you how we'd like to proceed. So let's go ahead. Councilman Friedman, go ahead and start in.
I get the issue. I welcome hearing it from Sean. I realize the timing issue, and I haven't seen it either. Of course, I didn't even know it was on the agenda.
We could just discuss
but
it.
But in the interest of proceeding and moving on a process that I've been talking about for almost a year, I welcome to hearing it, and I appreciate it. So,
I just a comment here. Thank you, Sean, for putting in the work, especially on short notice. I'm excited to hear this. I want to make sure that expectations aren't off here. None of the materials that Councilmember Friedman and I put together were intended as some kind of gotcha or pop quiz or what are you doing about this? They're intended for discussion. Steve, is that fair?
Clearly. I mean, and I'm assuming this will facilitate the discussion.
Right. And
And
so
I'm
I think
prepared to hear that.
right, and thus I'm excited to hear this. I think that the mayor portrayed some of the things showing up in the agenda as some kind of gotcha, surprise, pop quiz stuff, which I just don't think is how we wrote it or how we intended it when it showed up here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess what I would just ask that we, as a point of order and, according to the Roberts rules, we have an approved agenda. This presentation is not in it. I'm open to making an amendment, as we go along. That's okay. But personally, I'm interested in hearing the discussion that's on the agenda first. So it says Councilmember Friedman, Councilmember Hakamovich are going to lead this discussion. Code enforcement. Why don't we do that first? And then if everybody wants to hear, and then maybe in the meantime, you could email around the presentation from Mr. Tozer so we can at least have a chance to look at it prior to just diving into it. That would be helpful to me personally.
No problem. 1 second here, Dean.
So, excuse me. 2 months ago in a council meeting, I asked for some feedback from council on some specific items and things we could do better with enforcement. 2 Fridays ago, I felt like we got a really nice document from Councilmember Friedman, Councilmember Hakamovich, and the presentation that we have for you tonight is an attempt to say we hear you and here's what we think we hear you're saying, and here are a bunch of thoughts, ideas, and certainly a bunch of areas that open up questions for discussion. So I would really like for council to be able to hear this, because it feel, at least I believe that we hear what you're trying to say, and I'd like you to see the presentation. It's not any attempt at a gotcha from anybody.
Let me just respond to that, please. We got 35 people in this meeting, okay? And that's, some of those are city staff, some of those are council, and some of them are the public. And I would venture to guess that the vast majority of them have not been through these 4 different items that are under 5.1, discussion code enforcement. So I do not want to skip over all of that in favor of just jumping into a presentation that none of us has seen that's not on the agenda, okay? So I don't have a problem. I just said, I'm okay with doing that, but let's have the discussion that's on the agenda first. And then if the council wants to hear from Mr. Tozer, which I'm open to, then let's do that would be appropriate. But first, we have 2 council members who spent a lot of time thinking about this and pulling together their thoughts on behalf of the entire government. I want to hear those things first. Those are what's on the agenda. Let's do this right.
No worries. So Councilmember Friedman, I just promoted you. Would you like to give an overview on the starting point? And
well, actually, to be honest, I'm pleased that we have a presentation, because I basically had nothing more to say. It speaks for itself. We have talked incessantly about this issue for months, and I'm prepared. And we presented what we had. It's right there. It expresses the issues, gives us some suggested changes, and a mechanism to move forward if that would be helpful. And that was my hope. Sounds like it might be helpful, which I appreciate, and I appreciate the work. So as far as I'm concerned, I think I was actually hoping there would be some response from city, and now I feel we have it, and it makes me feel better.
Councilmember Hakamovich, anything you'd like to add first?
I respect Councilmember Moore's point of view on this. I think discussing Sean's feedback is probably the right thing to do here, and the public will have to read through some of the material on its own, and we can hope to provide context in line with it. But before going into the slide deck, I'd like to ask for a clarification of something. Councilmember Friedman and I asked the administration, do you think there is an enforcement problem? And the answer we got back was, we have a complaint report and there's no complaint problem based on the run rate of complaints. Councilmember Friedman, I repeated our question, is there an enforcement problem? And the response we got was, we know that you think there's an enforcement problem. And so before we duck into proposed solutions, I'd like to understand where we are in understanding the problem. I don't think that there's a complaint problem. I think, and I could be wrong here, that the council would agree that there is an enforcement problem. I'm not sure if there is agreement that there's an enforcement problem. And I'd just like to hear that, or if it's just, oh yeah, there's a complaint report, we know that you think there's one.
I believe we're answering your question in the content that Sean is going to deliver.
How about a yes, no?
What I liked when I was doing my research on this is the reference to a complaint program, and that whole program involves multiple facets, of which you have complaints, nuisances, you have situations where city staff will maybe identify that there's a need for an emergent stop order for public safety, health. There are situations where there are code violations that are found in different sort of situations that need to be enforced according to maybe what might be written in a title. And there are times where permits are not obtained and we need to enforce to make sure that the permits are obtained in order to proceed. So in my mind, I see the compliance and enforcement program as a big umbrella that has multiple facets to it that either are triggered by exacting code, or there's nothing there and we have to get legal interpretation or whatever it might be in order to base on how we're going to respond. And so most of what we've been talking about have been around the complaint process, but there are times where we have to get into certain code enforcement, such as when we have substantial remodels or with demolitions, for example. And then that's where you go into the code, and the code directs us as to what you're supposed to be doing about it. So it's a both and. We've been pretty straightforward, and you see the reports that are there. We do not have a lot of complaints. And I believe Sarah and company do a very good job in managing those complaints and processing them. Then we have those opportunities that crop up for however they start on, where we have to do enforcement according to the code. A lot of it might be in Title 17, but not all of them. And again, we reference what is passed in code, and I've been clear that what is passed in code is what we enforce to. I don't know much more to say about that, but that's where I go.
Okay, it was kind of I have no idea how to recap that. I listened and I took some notes. I'm not trying to recap that. Councilmember Friedman, do you think there's an enforcement problem?
Well, it's clear that's what we wrote. We described the problem and went through it. So
okay, Councilmember Muramoto, do you think we have an enforcement problem?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Jones, do you think we have an enforcement problem?
It could be better, yes.
Okay, so Mayor, are you saying yes, there's an enforcement problem? Scott, I'm sorry for excluding you.
You didn't ask.
Perfectly Freudian on my part. Councilmember Moore, do you think there's an enforcement problem?
Just a little. Yes. And let me be specific. Let me just give a specific example. I won't.
Can I? I'm sorry for doing this to you. It's just like, because we're already over 70 minutes into this meeting and we're not really watching the mile markers go by.
Give me 30 seconds.
I asked the administration if there's an enforcement problem. And I'm not sure if you're saying yes and or no but.
I would say no bet.
Please allow us
Okay.
to do the presentation. I think it will answer your question.
I'm excited to hear the presentation. I just want to point out that here's a great disconnect. You have 5 council members saying, yes, there's an enforcement problem, and you saying, no, there isn't. I am now ready to listen.
Yeah.
I would like
examples in these headings, then they would speak to themselves where they think the enforcement problems are. So I'm looking broadly at our community here.
Okay.
So if you're okay, Sean, please plow through.
Wait,
and I am sensitive to the time. I really would like to make sure that we can get through. I'm sorry, Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, I would just like to make one brief comment before we go into the presentation, which is we all got an email today from somebody, I don't remember their name, but there are also comments made earlier to the effect that we should enforce all of our code. What I don't think people understand is the code, just in a very specific example, only one example. Our code's like 32 years old, okay? And we have all these crazy hedge laws that almost no other city in Western Washington has. And one of them states that no living fence can be over 8 feet above original grade. Anybody know what original grade is? It doesn't mean from the ground up. It means the original grade for the piece of property, okay? And that is hard to determine in many cases. But if you even just drive around the city and look at how many living fences, AKA hedges, are over 8 feet, you'll be shocked. So if we want specific enforcement of the existing code in this city, there's going to be a lot of very unhappy homeowners. And I think people are like, coming in here and saying, oh, well, we want specific enforcement. No, you probably don't, because this is the problem that we have. We have bad laws, and then we have arbitrary and capricious enforcement that is done at the whim of the administration. And that is what's causing all these problems. I'm done. Thank you.
All right, Sean.
All right. Well, thank you, City Council, for taking a leap of faith, I suppose, and being willing to listen to this. I really think that honestly, a better setup. And I am behind the camera, so you can't see me, but hopefully you can hear me just fine. So I really think the setup. Everybody can see this, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I really actually think the setup that you guys just did, as far as Councilmember Friedman sharing his thoughts, and then a lot of the other opinion and discussion that's had, is actually really helpful to this discussion. I hope that you will see a big step in acknowledging a lot of this discussion and where hopefully this pays off here. So again, based on Councilmember Friedman and Councilmember Hakamovich's
Sean, it's not showing up. You'll have to.
Hit presentation.
The presentation doesn't show up online.
Oh.
Yeah, it's showing up in the room, but not online.
You guys still see this?
May not be able to go.
We can see it. He just needs
okay.
to.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll do it from here then.
Yeah, stay in that mode. Yeah.
Okay, so what we want to do is seek common ground, and again, not focus on differences of opinion, because we certainly have some of those between council. I mean, that's not a secret. But again, maximizing where we have agreement, and again, finding common ground to move forward. I think, we couldn't convince some of you guys of some things that we believe in, and just as much, you may not be able to convince us of some things you believe. And that's where we've been stuck for a while in this little illustration here about an idea, an opposing reaction. And that's kind of where we've been stuck. I believe that the framework that Councilmember Friedman and Hakamovich provided may get us to that synthesis piece where we resolve this tension. We find a new idea to move forward, we hope. And I know that sounds really flowery, but give me some time and let's move forward. So very specifically, we use the framework that was provided in that document, proposed solutions 1, 2, and we'll go through them in series. In the big middle part there, you'll see the exact recommendation from council, and then you'll see staff or administration sort of response resolution, some discussion points on the right. For this particular one, again, proposed solution 1 was revise the policy to update the complaint process and who can complain. Something we wanted to clarify is is that no complaint is generally dismissed. We don't call, somebody doesn't call or send us an email and we said, oh, too bad, that's, no luck. We listen to everything. Everything gets a level of investigation, a level of discussion. Not all complaints are acted upon. Not all complaints have enforcement or follow-up items because they're deemed for one reason or the other to not move forward. So, but we do hear the concerns of council. And again, this has been a long-standing issue that we're hoping to fix. We understand that the materially affected designation might be causing some of this problem. It was intended to prevent problems. It was intended to prevent retaliatory action by neighbors. But maybe it's causing more problems than it's worth. And that's something we understand and we're willing to talk about. And then one of the clarifiers is in there, and I think it's been discussed in a couple meetings, is council's intent that any person can complain about any compliance issue anywhere. And that was, again, part of that, part of the materially affected bit. But again, moving past that, we are certainly open to the idea about, just as a basis for moving forward, removing the materially affected piece. If that is a sticking point, if that is something that we believe that there's going to be some resolution to and satisfy council, that is not something that staff and administration is opposed to. And I'm going to keep moving through these items and then we can recap at the end if that's okay for everybody.
Yeah.
Proposed solution 2, clarify and identify city right of way and update 821. So we have a little bit of disagreement in here, but again, we want to clarify and really explain why we are taking the position we take, which is right of way is very clearly identified in Clyde Hill Municipal Code. So it is the definitions right there. I don't necessarily need to read it for you, but pretty much it is all portions in unimproved or improved portions thereof. So we do not recommend a change to the definition of right of way. Right of way has a lot of context, a lot of meanings for utilities, for city, for a lot of things. And again, that is one place where maybe we diverge a little bit more, but we believe it is adequately defined and we believe that is correctly defined. Now, defining uses within the right of way is another story. Proposed solution 3, stay out of neighbor disputes when the issue is clearly private. We understand that. We wish that we could do that. But again, something we find all the time is that really every single complaint we find is a neighbor dispute. This is a 1.1 square mile city. Everybody's a neighbor. Very reasonable and adequate complaints are between neighbors. And squarely, they often put the city square in between those disputes. We always encourage these neighbors to resolve this in private parties and try to do it privately as much as possible. That's not always the case, but we will certainly continue to minimize our interaction when a code violation is not present. We don't want to be in those disputes anyway. And if there's no code violation or no pressing business for the city to perform, we agree. We should not be involving in those types of situations. Okay, don't anticipate potential violations when none have occurred. This is an item we have general agreement on. Actually, complaint-based enforcement is the antithesis of anticipatory enforcement. So we believe we're really there already. There is some clarification on here where in my day-to-day business, I am actually anticipating that my contractors or contractors working in the city will absolutely violate the code. And I anticipate they will fail to do what they are required to do. And so we actually have this push-pull because code enforcement isn't just hedges. It isn't just mailboxes and things like that. It is a broad topic. It involves building department, it involves mechanical, it's public works. It's very broad. And again, for the majority of our business, we absolutely anticipate that they will violate the code. And we warn them squarely of that. I do it very openly and honestly when I meet contractors. I say, hey, I know you're telling me this, but if you do this other thing, the hammer will come down. So I understand they're slightly different, maybe like, oranges and tangerines, but it is pertinent and it's something to be aware, to be mindful of. Is we anticipate violations regularly. Again, we don't professionally feel that follow-up and clarifying dialogue is, it's not intended to be accusatory. When we follow up with somebody, and again, I do this in my daily business with contractors, we're constantly following up on things and it does extend to the public. It's not to accuse them of something. Again, it's ensuring compliance. It's ensuring that we've taken the steps appropriately. So our kind of summary item on this was that we believe the continuation of the current practice wouldn't conflict with the recommendation that you have made. Number 5, fully communicate the policy to residents. We agree completely, 100%. No space between you and us. What we want to do is we're working on a flow chart, and I think I have an example of it further down after 6. But we absolutely agree that we can make this easier. We can work on a flow chart that describes the process. Sarah's been making a lot of progress on this as well, and really describe the whole complaint process from beginning to end, open to close, and provide transparency to people. When this product is done and when we've had review, we'll be happy to put it on the website. There was a version of it for the Sunlight hearing, I think, that we kind of modeled off of. But again, room for improvement. So solution 5, we have 100% agreement. Solution 6, same story here, really. Prepare a guide to understanding policy and compliance and a checklist. We think the checklist may be able to be accomplished in that flow chart. But again, let's make it really easy for people to understand how to make a complaint, the correct way to make a complaint, what's required, and then what we do, so what action to expect. That is very reasonable, and we agree that that's something we should do. We think the flow chart will go a long way in that. The checklist may be beneficial. We're going to kind of look at if that would be a duplication of effort, but again, we're there, we agree. One of the things that we might have a recommendation on is recommending that these complaints be formal, especially if we open up to anybody, anywhere, for anything. It might be that our practice and our policy should include written formal complaints rather than email, somebody told me on the street, at the grocery store. Other than that, I think that would be a better tracking mechanism for us. It would ensure consistency and fairness for the both the complainant and the person defending themselves. Again, that is just staff thoughts on that. Here is a draft of that flow chart we discussed. And I understand, I apologize you guys got this at the end of the day. It's been very busy, but we think it was pertinent and we thought this was important enough and we had enough agreement that we could move conversation forward with council. I know those are little tiny boxes up there, but again, some of the audience is struggling to read it over here. I know you guys can't see that, it's theater of the mind, but again, complaint received, investigation, enforcement, hearing, doesn't apply to everything. This is a draft, but this is the sort of format we're looking at. Something that's really detailed. It's detailed enough. Exactly, appropriately detailed. Proposed solution 7, regularly publish an enforcement report to provide transparency on all complaints. Again, this is an item, and I don't know if I can't count because there's been a bunch, but we've at least 3 items here that we 100% agree with you guys on. We don't have any space between your opinion and our opinion. But again, this is something that we already generally have in place. I understand that we want modifications and it's a constant process of improvement, which we are open to. But one of the things I mentioned this in the land use committee the other day, is a lot of these items that we're talking about are value adds. These aren't long-standing tools that Clyde Hill has had in place forever. This isn't, there was no process that was wrecking balled when somebody came in. We are seeing a higher level of transparency than this city's ever experienced before. And I think that's great and we can do better. But I think that's an important thing to understand, is that even with what we're doing and even that we could do better, we're doing a lot more than was ever done before. And I understand, I recognize that council sees that. Again, improvements are welcome. We 100% agree. So those were the main 7 items. Here's and I know guys, this is really small up there. You'll have to trust me, but there's a bunch of information there. Very important. But again, this is an example of that complaint list. Council, you're very familiar with this. You've seen this. I think I even changed it to compliant and enforcement list on the top of that heading today. So it might be that way forever now. But again, this is something we're doing. I understand it could use improvement and it can get better, but it's what we have at the moment, and it's a great start. Thank you. So that is the end of the presentation. There's a few more slides after this that have just kind of discussion points. We may or may not want to go over those. We can discuss any slide going backwards at council's discretion, but that is the end of this presentation, and I yield my time.
Yep. So Councilmember Hakamovich.
So I think that Councilmember Friedman has been working on this for a very long time. And while I have some thoughts to share, I would really like to hear from him first.
Okay. Sean and staff, thanks. Appreciate it. Really appreciate the effort you put in. Here's actually what I would, a couple of things I'd like to say. And given that I've just seen this and hearing you, I'm trying to get it in my head. Number one is, it's nice to be agreed with, but I'm not looking for 100% agreement. What I'm looking for is an updated policy that is fair and consistently applied to the community. And I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm not asking you to do everything I've said. Those are suggestions. Part of your comments in there talked about when I said don't anticipate potential violations when you go out and look. I really, if you recall from what we wrote, I was kind of specific towards codes that I thought this clearly would, this change in policy would clearly apply to. So to the extent that you broaden it to apply to other codes, that's fine. But here's what I would like to see. I would like to see from administration the input that you've had amongst yourselves, the input you've heard from the public, the input you've heard from us, and I would like to see the policy and have you propose as to what we should do and how we can improve it. I think that's the way I would want to proceed. I've given you all the input I have, and at this point, but I might have some others as you provide something that would help. But I think you have the framework for what you're trying to do already. It's not going to be, I agree, it won't be perfect. It'll be adjusted over time. This is what you're really doing, is you're changing the policy that you already have in place to apply more effectively to the community. You're concerned on the neighbor disputes. I understand. That's why I was specific to certain parts of the code. But that's something to be discussed, and then we can work on. So I'm not here to say everything's perfect, nor do I just have a problem. I want to see what administration comes back to on how you can implement it and proceed. One item on the easement you mentioned, Sean. I don't propose to change the easement. I just propose to make it clear to the community what you can and can't do within the easement, because I think there's separate rules and expectations of how we use an easement versus how we use right past the easement, right into the offset, into the setback rather. And so, but of course, easement, I get it. Easement has its own value and use, and so that's part of what your policy applies to. And I just want to make that clear to the public so that when they go out to do something, and they need to know where that easement is. They have an easy way to find it, and then they know what they can and can't do in terms of violating the code. Simple as that.
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedman. Yeah, I should have introduced myself at the beginning, but it's Sean, so it works. But I absolutely hear what you say. I think that's part of our trick. And again, I think one of the benefits of what you guys provided is exactly to what you said, is that framework. And so, whereas before, I think we felt that we had a lot of issue statements and problem statements. Now we have kind of this roadmap that, we have the next step that you guys provided in finding these policy resolutions. And so that's really what we're trying to grasp at. And that's where, again, looking for this council to say, yeah, these 7 things are the will of this council. And if we can square away these 7 items, yeah, I mean, that provides us really clear direction, a solid basis to work from, rather than, trying to anticipate what we think you guys want. Again, and that's where what you guys provided is very helpful. But I think this kind of feedback's very, very helpful. I'm a little leery about defining enforcement by different types of codes that are, reside in the, non-criminal, right? They're just kind of our daily codes. It does get to be different if,
Yep.
we say, hey, in only these 3 subsections are we going to do this, that gets to be very difficult. And that's where, and I know it's not always popular, but that's where staff judgment comes into play, is you have to rely that staff is doing a good enough job and making the correct judgment calls to adjudicate those things. And so again, your policy is broad, your policy reinforces things, but at the end of the day, there's code enforcement, and then there's somebody at the pointy end of code enforcement. And those are very difficult to always make to satisfy. So yeah, my 2 cents, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hakamovich, did you have a comment? Where's your hand still up?
No, my hand's still up, so I can offer this comment. I agree with what Councilmember Friedman said. I think after this delightful surprise, it makes sense to figure out, and I don't expect it right now, dates and meetings when this gets refined. And it sounds like there's a great 2-member committee to go and sit down, provide detailed feedbacks, and come back to the council with some more thought. And I think that's great. I had a couple of specific bits I wanted to make sure we called out publicly here. One is, this is a complaint-based policy and the city gets to lodge complaints. This is something that Councilmember Friedman and I just kept scratching our head at, because we're like, no, only certain residents are allowed to complain, but the city can complain about anything it wants. And that seemed to be a fascinating loophole that did not really make a whole lot of sense at all. A question for the city attorney. Did you see these slides? Did you get a chance to look at these before this presentation? No. I'm sorry, it garbled out.
Try again.
Can you hear me now? I'm having some internet issues.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I did not see the slides beforehand.
Okay, great. So I'd like to suggest very specifically that on number 2, we're not trying to redefine what a right-of-way is. A right-of-way has a definition. There's a whole lot of give and discussion around what to do with rights-of-way. And I think the point was not how do we redefine it, but what are we doing with it? For example, I don't know if the city of Clyde Hill makes residents aware of RCW 35.79, and that residents can come to the city and say, that right of way by my house, I'd like a street vacation. I would like to buy it off the city. Let's go do that. Medina, a few years ago, put a process in place to make that easier and predictable for residents. Clyde Hill, not yet. There's a lot of ambiguity in what's going on with rights of way. There's a public records request that a resident shared with me with a member of the city staff, insisting that the right of way is the city's property. It's very important for the city to say exactly what's going to happen in that right of way because it belongs to the city. And I found that a bit distressing. Just given where we are in the meeting, we should probably just move on at this point and get on with the land use committee. And I'm sorry, subject to the other 3 council members having comments on this. Sorry, no
other input,
cutting you off, not intended.
I want to summarize. Any other comments? Seeing none. Councilmember Moore. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. I think we should move on as well. However, I'm still totally unclear on what the city's proposal is with regard to enforcement of existing code, AKA hedge laws. I don't think you need to answer that question right now, but I don't see that addressed in this presentation. And that to me is a miss. So, I mean, this just feels like a topic we should spend more time on at another time. We've got a lot.
Now, what I'm hearing, and Sean, I'm going to look at you to see what you need, is the desire for staff to go back and now be a little more constructive in, if you will, a kind of a policy statement, and then bring it back to council for kind of next level of discussions? Or were we wanting 1 or 2 of the council members to sit down with us and work through it. It could be either or, depending on your interest or willingness or time. Any thoughts?
I look to Councilmember Friedman.
In the interest of efficiency, I think the committee method seems to work to get things accomplished in bringing back a more complete document to the council.
Okay.
So I'm glad to do that. I'm glad to do my part. I've talked about it long enough. I should be part of it.
Thank you.
I'm happy to join Councilmember Friedman on that.
Okay. And I know, Councilmember Hakamovich, you are going on a well-deserved time away. Do you want us just to start in with Councilmember Friedman if you're unable to join, or wait until you return?
You know, I'm calling you from Dublin right now, where it is 4:30.
Oh, you're already there. Oh my gosh, God bless you.
And so,
good job.
you know, why don't we, like, I think there's a fine starting point in mail, and I'll be back soon enough to meet with people in person. I think that to what's been said, writing it out in one place is a heck of a good start.
Okay.
You let me know when the meeting is and I'll be there.
Thank you. We have our 2 council members. Sean, we will set that up. And yes, the intention is under when indicated with other levels of enforcements play out. And I think I've been clear on multiple occasions on when those are, at least as they exist in our current codes. So we can spell that out in the policy so people know it's not only complaint, but under these conditions where we would be looking at that. Okay, got a game plan. We'll go forth. Thank you. Moving on now, 5.2. This is our discussion after the Land Use Committee met and looking at kind of what we're proposing and recommending for next steps. I'm not sure if Council Members Muramoto or Hakamovich wish to make any comment from what we had discussed at that meeting. We can launch right in. Who's sharing the screen?
Kim, would you like to say something?
Probably the recommendation.
Go ahead. You can go ahead.
I think my one comment here is at the previous meeting, Councilmember Friedman asked about short-term changes to enforcement policy, and the statement we heard was there's a super new, cool, creative idea that we haven't been able to talk about yet because the Land Use Committee hadn't happened, and that all progress on short-term enforcement is stuck behind what the Land Use Committee agrees to or doesn't agree to. And we walked out of the Land Use Committee with some set of changes to Title 17 workflow, but I'm really confused about that statement about short-term policy enforcement improvements because I just can't reconcile it with what actually happened. Thank you.
Well, okay. So how about if we go to the recommendations so that you got that, Sean, on the first Land Use Committee agenda and the last page. Can you click on and then go to the last page?
Can you see this?
Yeah, scroll down. There it is. Okay. So let me lay context. So I asked the staff if they would highlight the items on the left in green, because some of you might recall that's kind of how we've been referring to this list as the green highlighted list, which were items identified as where we may want to go to next to get staff, Blue Line Group legal input and get it prepped up and ready to go for any revisions. When we met, we had more information, more updates. As always, there's new things out in the community and in politics to say whether we should proceed or not. And then there's new things that popped on the horizon to say we have strong recommendations to put something else in on the docket. And so I'm not sure if Dean, you're going to speak to these or not. But what our recommendations, and this was with input from the 2 council members with the discussion, are those 5 items on the right-hand side. And it can be in that order. And if we get something going and we're waiting for certain elements to take place, we can start in on the next topic and just keep the work going. So do you want to share roughly what those 5 are? And
Sure. So a couple of items that I wanted to reinforce is that we believe we can make these chapters, these changes to Title 17 to remain consistent with our existing comp plan. And the easiest example of that is how page 9 of our comp plan refers directly to our fence code, 1737, in relationship to living fences and their 8-foot height limit. So there needs to be consistency between the comp plan and our code. So we believe that we can make some surgical changes to the 5 sections of the code. The green ones on the left were the ones we approved in Q4 2021. And we tried to nail that down to actually put some sort of an order to things and prioritize the 7 actually down to 5. There were a couple that didn't feel that actually applied well. Items 2, 3, and 4, we can mix those around as needed, but it certainly made sense to do number 5 last, because once we make other changes, there might be other definitions needed. We know we have a couple in pools and things like that from previous changes we already made. So as for the prioritization of the code, we had talked about a new piece of legislation that came out in 2021 that we learned about as we brought in our planning consultants, and it had to do with something called permanent supportive and transitional housing. And we want to try and get out ahead of that. It kind of goes down that La Quinta pathway from conversations we've had previously. So we wanted to try and work on that one first. And then also at that meeting, it was requested that staff create a flow chart, which I believe is the next page in the agenda.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a flow chart on that kind of put the process that we have tried to talk about a number of times on how we're looking to make changes both to the comp plan and to the land use code, specifically the land use code here, and how we would bring it back to council. And at the meeting, we also had talked about adding like a subcommittee, which I think we just kind of did with council members Friedman and Akamovich to actually work with staff, and we would bring these things as we have them to get vetted by that committee, and then bring them to the council as a whole. So the bottom line was that staff recommends that we that we pare down our green list of the 7 land use sections to back to the other one, sorry. Back to kind of the surgical strike at the 5 listed. And I think that
the very first one, there was a House Bill 1220, and many other cities have already jumped on making sure they had internal codes in writing in order to be able to direct or deflect anything that might happen in our own community. So it would potentially prevent outsiders from buying available land and then being able to turn that over into multiple housing unit options. And Medina, for example, is one city that's already put a lot of effort, time, and resources into that. We don't have to start with a blank piece of paper. We got a couple of communities out there that's already done the big legwork, and we would be putting our attorney on that and really making sure at least the city had something in writing, because without it, we then are an open book. So that is why we're recommending number 1 really as a priority. The second one, 1780 on code enforcement, I believe the big piece on that is really 1780.014, which is putting the mediator process that we have put in for the earlier comment between individuals that have disputes, and even on the our view process. we want to take the mayor out of that role and put the mediator in for if there's going to be escalations and appeals. So we wanted to be consistent with other elements of our code. That was just one area that got missed, and we'd like to make it consistent, pretty easy fix. The third one there is the visibility on the corners. I think we have certain areas that have corners, and for visibility and making sure that the shrubs in the line of sight, that we have clarity over what our law is saying that we can and cannot do. And then the 1760-030, that number 4, that is the one that Councilmember Hakamovich was queuing us up for. This one here is really looking at probably just certain elements B and C of that particular chapter. And what it talks about is substantial remodel. And at present, if somebody is coming in doing a substantial remodel, there is a monetary threshold by which then it says, you know what, you thought you were just doing a kitchen remodel, but because you hit a monetary threshold, you now need to bring everything up on your property up to code, including what might be outside landscaping that you had no hope or thought or wonder that you had to deal with. There are other approaches that we can do. And again, as Dean mentioned, we believe we can tackle these without having to change our comp plan and go through all the extra steps of approving a comp plan revision in addition to title revision. We would like to look creatively at what other sort of thresholds in a substantial remodel could be looked at, either raising the threshold monetary value, maybe it's a percentage of your home, maybe it's, if you're only doing an internal, then you only have to bring internals up to code. You don't have to go outside, and if you're doing outside work, you don't have to bring anything inside up to code. It would, again, on that flow chart, get the right people together. If council tonight agrees to this kind of lineup, and people can get together, do their proposals, bring it back to council, have their views on board, blessed, approved, and then send it on to planning commission so that they get input, they get public hearing, and then we can kind of get everything finalized in that way. And then again, we have definitions along the way that need to be created or revised or more clear. And that just is that 1704 that we just need to keep concurrent with any work that we do in any chapter. Council, is that clear what we're asking for? And will you then approve, if you will, the 1 through 5 listing as our starting game plan of priorities? Thank you. Let me see. First on my list is Councilmember Muramoto.
Actually, I think Councilmember Moore was first.
Okay, I'm just going off of 1, 2 on my sheet. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. Oh, could you put the exhibit back up? Whoever had that?
Yep.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any strong, pushback on these recommendations. However, the list on the left there in green, we approved as a council either in December or January. I'm not sure which it was.
Yeah.
Here we are in June. And as far as I can tell, it doesn't look like anything has happened on that set of 7 things. And then you've got a few of them that are moving over to the right, and then you're adding new ones. Okay. So from a process standpoint, this is my frustration with the way that the administration operates. You ask the council for input back in December, January. We gave input very clearly. I don't know if we voted or what, but that list on the left is what we agreed to do. And now you're saying just basically throw out several of these and add some new ones. And I just don't I don't get it. I mean, we already said as a council, we wanted you to look at these 7 on the left. So if you want to add more to that, I don't have a problem with it, but why are we taking things off? Yep. In particular, 1737 fences, that is a highly problematic section of our code. We even had people tonight come on and make statements about that clearly don't understand what's in that code. So why would we take that off the list? But the broader point is just from a process standpoint, why aren't we doing what we said we were going to do 6 months ago? Why are we only now going, oh, gee, actually, we want to change what we want to focus on? I don't understand that.
Yeah. Mayor, can I answer that? Because Councilmember Moore, I get it. And when I first saw this list, I was kind of where you were. And here's the dilemma. We're in a bit of a catch-22. If we were to take on, for example, fences up front, that when we make changes to that, if we make substantive changes to that, or accessory dwellings, or private lanes and signs, that potentially triggers comp plan changes. So we're now into this catch-22 where we have to make changes to our comp plan in order to be consistent with the codes that we're changing, and we can't do that without public hearings. So the dilemma is we either need to do that cycle twice, and some of those comp plan changes need to go to the state, and we're now 2 years out. So we're kind of in this dilemma where we unless we make minimal changes to fences, accelerated dwellings, private lane changes that probably would not be substantive at all, we couldn't do that without comp plan changes. So we go through the cycle, and there is provisions to make changes out of cycle, but it still has to go to the state. So the discussion we had, so that's kind of why we kind of said, well, okay, we get it. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating. It's part of the bureaucracy of what we have to do. So what we did, what administration came back and said to us is, well, here's the things that we can do, which is what you see on the right. Mm-hmm. And frankly, then we almost have to follow the standard flow of comp plan changes, public input, make those changes to fences, accessory dwellings, private lanes, signs, run that through the state, and then we can make code changes after the state kind of approves it. And it's in my opinion, it's an incredibly bureaucratic process. It's frustrating, but that's kind of what we're stuck with.
Okay, then is the proposal here that we would do the recommended ones on the right first, and then circle back on the other ones, or am I missing? I'm confused.
Well, it's a great question, Scott, and I apologize that I didn't make that clear. Tom, not only was Councilmember Muramoto correct in terms of we really wanted to make sure we weren't triggering those which would have to then formally go through a comp plan change and then all the state sort of approvals, but there were also other ones too that from a legislative and a legal perspective, we were advised to wait because of some current changes that were going on. I'm correct in remembering that, right?
Correct. Basically, the comp plan provides a more of a general land use overview, and then the codes itself drill down a little bit. So there's room to make modifications with some of these code sections and still remain consistent with the comp plan. Others would require comp plan amendments as well as code change amendments, and we're already in a process to revise the entire comprehensive plan. And we felt it was better to grapple with those things as part of the larger comp plan amendment, 10-year amendment, so that we didn't step on our own feet.
Okay, so then I'm interpreting that to mean that the recommendation is to pursue the ones on the right hand first. Yes. But then as part of because I remember when we had this discussion, it was very much about the comprehensive plan update. And this only happens every so often, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So our laws, as you know, many of them date from 1990 or even earlier. Okay, it's 32 years ago for some of these laws. They're badly out of date. And one of the reasons we have so many problems with code enforcement is because the laws are kind of nutty. I mean, some of them are just ludicrous. If people actually read them and tried to understand them, they'd know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, I think we need to go in and do that work, even if it takes 2 years to do it, right? The comprehensive. So I just want to make sure that didn't fall away.
No, it'll be picked up on the normal process. You're right.
It's just a matter of the sequencing. Am I understanding that right? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Councilmember Hakomovich.
So just to make sure we have that I have the timelines straight. Council will vote to approve what this collaborative plan is. When when we move forward together, Councilmember Friedman and I and administration working on these particular chapters, we're working on these chapters because we believe they won't trigger a comp plan redo. When we come up with changes that we feel good about and we send them through the planning committee and then they come back to the council, how long will it take before the changes are final and benefit residents?
Oh, on these ones that won't need a comp plan, it should be
Correct.
right after they're all approved, yes.
Got it. So it is a relatively short council. Councilmember Friedman and I work with the administration. There's a proposal. Council approves the proposal, goes to the planning commission. Planning commission does heavy lifting, brings it back to the council. Council ideally votes on it, and then it's on the books and residents benefit. So we're talking like months, not years.
Correct. And the public have an opportunity as required during the planning commission.
My internet's gone.
Process, right. And that is that, again,
Okay.
That's that second attachment under 5.2 that is filled out.
Okay.
So is everybody okay?
But it's just in terms of
Thumbs up?
expectation setting months.
Yep.
Good.
Okay.
Once we launch in, away we go. All right, so I'm not seeing any other thoughts, any further discussion. That is the
I
game
just want to
plan.
clarify one thing. I just want to clarify one thing. When Councilmember Friedman asked about short-term enforcement improvements, the comment that was made at that meeting was that short-term code, that the short-term enforcement policy improvements can't happen without the land use committee meeting, because there's important stuff that's going to happen at the land use committee meeting. And I still can't connect those two dots. Was there something?
I'm not connecting it either, to be honest.
Okay, well, then I'll send you the transcript of your statements about how it's too bad the land use committee meeting had been canceled because, well, otherwise we can't have any real progress on short-term code enforcement until the land use committee figures things out.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll have to remember what I meant by that, so thank you. Okay, anything further? Councilmember Muramoto, your hand's still up?
Sorry, I thought that we purposely left it in there because we decided that there were things we could do within code enforcement that weren't part of the comp plan because they were more tactical in nature. So
Sorry,
I think
1780
that's what,
versus short-term. Sorry.
yeah, it was
1780
1780 was in fact we could make changes to 1780 short term without triggering any comp plan changes.
Totally agree with you,
Okay.
Kim. It's that all of Steve's short-term enforcement stuff, none of that stuff is in 1780 right now.
Yeah, okay.
Correct, it's not. And when we get together for the policy, we just talked about under 5.1, that has to find a place. So.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it.
Okay, good job. All right, we got a game plan. No other objections. We're moving on. 5.3, Budget Advisory Committee in the 2023 process. We had survey results that you can see in the section there. I guess what I would like to say, because we're going to be coming up on the July 26th special study session on budget and finance and such, is that I believe having a budget advisory committee, and we would need to solicit, I know we already had it in the newsletter, but I think it's a wonderful opportunity for our residents to get involved, especially those that like to deal with numbers and give that level of, that makes sense, you're off base. And also it's a really good opportunity. Several of those people have gone on to become leaders on other sort of committees. So it's a real opportunity to get involvement in the community. So I'm not sure, Council, what more discussion you want to have on this topic. I believe we're trying hard. Lisa is going to be a key point person on making more efficient and more relevant, more practical approaches. And yes, if we do bring new people onto the Budget Advisory Committee, they should be oriented on the side so that we, when we come to the meeting, can just hit the ground running and moving forward. So I'm not sure, Dean, were we going to ask anything more off of this or?
I think we were, it sounded like, my recollection from the last meeting that we talked about this, there was a little bit of like wanting to discuss whether or not we would continue to have the budget advisory committee, that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure that was still council's direction on wanting to go there.
I think the feedback, and I defer to the other four, is that the BAC is a great idea. There are some pretty crucial discussions that never actually happened. And the thought was, how can we adjust this process? And the survey was supposed to be en route to adjusting that process.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the survey does or sheds light on. I think Councilmember Friedman looked at the results and might have an opinion.
You keep doing this to me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I didn't find any, actually, my question would be, to those who administered the survey, did you learn anything that would be useful? I have no problem with the Budget Advisory Committee, by the way. I mean, I'd love to have more input from the community and assistance from people who have experience and capability.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, there's a reason we've had it, and I don't have a problem with that. Anyway.
Yeah, it's better practice. I agree. Councilmember Jones.
Sure. I participated on the Budget Advisory Committee before getting on the council, and I think it was a great way to learn about the town, as you already pointed out. But for me, the thing that's going to make this much more useful is this assumptions process,
yeah.
Expectations effort that we're going to do in July that will set kind of the framework for the whole Budget Advisory Committee work. And at the same time, you could talk a bit in that same meeting about any changes that might make sense in the process and evolve it that way. I'm excited to get involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that Councilmember Friedman, you were having some good input off of that as well. Let's start with what are the needs and let's really be super clear and then help that to drive the budget. So, okay, we will forge ahead, but yeah, I think as we are getting more and more comfortable of getting out of the shadows of past administrations and how they had led the budget and all the hundreds of pages that kind of led up to it, I keep appreciating Commissioner Kwan's feedback. Is like when she came to one of the budget meetings, she had, out of all the hundreds of pages, like 6 pages that she found to be the most pertinent and important things to have at her fingertips during the meeting. I'm like, I want to know what those 6 pages are, because if we can kind of get ourselves narrowed and concise and efficient that way, why wouldn't we? So we'll strive for that. Okay, thank you. 5.4, moving on. This is the mayor message to staff, and Councilmember Hakamovich, you had asked for this to be on the agenda. What would you like to say?
Right, Councilmember Friedman and I asked to add this item to the agenda. The mail that went to city staff had not gone to the council, so it was new to us. At the risk of sounding like I'm speaking on behalf of Councilmember Friedman, I think that he and I were both surprised by the content. And what I want to do is ask the mayor, if she wouldn't mind, to clarify her intent in sending the mail. And that's it.
Okay. So Councilmember Hakamovich, after you had posted on your blog the information related to the city administrator, there was a lot of questions and concerns, and it was felt that there just should be some information provided, just kind of put it in context, and that is where our attorney, Tom Brubaker, had put together that email that was sent out to City Council. Thank you. And then as we talked with the staff, they were equally having questions and concerns. And I had asked our attorney if there was any problems with me forwarding what he had put together to the staff so that they would be in the know. Because we get phone calls, we get people popping in, they're having questions, they're reading this, and we just wanted everybody to be on a level playing field. My preamble conversation in that email that preceded what our attorney put out there, the intent on that is to acknowledge that when these things are occurring, that it is impactful to the city, and it was and is impactful. And I try very hard to go around when I'm here frequently and touching base with everybody that happens to be on site, and that we are a work family. And if one person is having issues or concerns, it's felt by everybody. And I really wanted to show support. And I really wanted them to know that I acknowledge that this is impacting. It can be a chaotic, difficult time, and that we're all trying to lead through it with as much grace as possible, and to have faith and hope that we're going to come out stronger and better as a result of that, because I truly believe that in the way I approach everything that I do and in leadership. And I just wanted to know I was in support of them, and to make sure that if they had questions or concerns, that they can certainly know and be reminded that I am an escalation point for them. And they should always feel comfortable that they can signal for me if they needed that. So I just wanted to show support and ask for everybody to stay positive, stay productive, and that we will work through this. So I didn't see anything wrong with what I was doing and the intent behind that. Part of my job is to make sure that the city is running well and that they are able to kind of keep productive and know where they can turn to if they have concerns. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you. It's helpful to hear that. Thanks. I don't have anything else. I'm not sure if anyone else does.
No.
Okay. Thank you. 5.5 was added to have discussion on the petition for the change of form of government. Councilmember Moore.
Right. I was actually going to make a comment first on the last item, since I'm
sorry.
Featured fairly prominently in it. And I just would like to state for the record that I don't believe you distributed the 28-page complaint that I filed. But if anybody on the city staff or any member of the public would like to read it, I'd be more than happy to provide it so that you have some context as opposed to just the mayor's comments and the city attorney's comments. But the other question I just have for the city attorney is, I was a little bit disturbed by the way that he characterized Lieutenant Hanson's conversations with these two former prosecutors, because he says, based on Lieutenant Hanson's quote verbal summarization of the case, unquote. He goes on, and then please note that the record does not disclose what facts or summary Lieutenant Hanson provided to DPA Shapiro, and we have no direct statement from DPA Shapiro, only Lieutenant Hanson's restatement. And there's another similar comment about her conversation or her reporting of the conversation with DPA Shapiro. And I'd just like to point out that Lieutenant Hanson is a 12-year veteran of Clyde Hill Police Department. She is number 2 in the command of that department. She has served the city with great distinction and honor. And I can't imagine that Attorney Brubaker intended to cast any aspersions on her honesty or veracity in terms of how she would report these conversations. But I would just like to hear from him if my assumption on that is correct.
Attorney Tom Brubaker, are you able to comment?
Yeah, I guess I can. This was a complaint for criminal harassment. As is typical protocol, it was handed to a separate city's police department to conduct an investigation. The investigation came back on the criminal complaint that there was no basis to proceed further. There was no basis for a criminal complaint based on the data, the 28 pages and other information reviewed by the Medina Police Department. The lieutenant called county prosecutors for reasons I'm not entirely clear of to ask if they would review the result of the criminal investigation. And both prosecutors who practice criminal law, not civil law, said that they concurred. There was no basis for a criminal complaint. As an aside, the lieutenant's report indicated that there may be a civil case based on these two criminal prosecutors' statements. And I pointed out, and I'll stand by it, we don't know how or to what degree these people, she relayed the facts to these people. We don't know if they looked at the complaint. We don't know if they looked at the investigation materials. We don't know how it was related, and we don't know exactly how they responded. It's all secondhand speculation, and it's not germane to the investigation at all. So that's why I said it. I felt it was important to say that.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? I think we're ready to move on. All right. So we're on 5.5, the petition for change of form of government.
Right. Well, I think I asked to have that on, so can I go ahead and?
Yes, please do. Go ahead.
Thank you. As I said earlier, and as Ms. Slivka spoke to, the city received 150 signatures today, I think, from Clyde Hill voters who signed a petition that was asking for a ballot measure to hold an election so that the voters of the city of Clyde Hill can decide whether to change from the mayor council form of government to the council manager form of government. Based on the memo that City Attorney Brubaker sent around, there are two methods for that to get onto the ballot. One is a fairly time-consuming, laborious process through King County elections where they validate the signatures and then it gets, this is my understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Brubaker, but, and that the next ballot that it could go, next election that it could be put on would not be until November of 2023. So it would have to wait almost a year and a half. The threshold for the number of signatures required to put it on the ballot is 10% of the last election's votes cast in Clyde Hill. And I believe there were 98 votes cast last year from Clyde Hill. So the threshold would be 98 signatures. There are 150 signatures, so it's over 50% more signatures that are required to put it on the ballot. The second way that it can go on the ballot is if by the passing of a resolution by the city council, and if that happens, then it can go on the next election, which would be this November. So November of 2022, provided that the city council passes a resolution to put it onto the ballot. Before I go on, I just wanted to mention something that occurred to me when I heard about this petition going around. I was like, where have I read about the right to petition? And so I Googled it, looked it up, and found that it's right in the First Amendment to the Constitution, which, if you'll indulge me, I'll read. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So this is a fundamental right that we all have as American citizens to petition our government and ask our elected officials who serve at the pleasure of the people to do something about that. So we as elected council members are now faced with a petition from a substantial number of our constituents who say they want to have this question put on a ballot. And we have the power to do that and put it on in November. I looked up on the MRSC website how many, what is the history of council manager versus mayor council in the state of Washington. And that website states that since 1970, 16 newly chartered cities have chosen the council manager form. Only one has chosen mayor council. So it's been overwhelming since 1970 that every new city has chosen the council manager form. Likewise, since 1970, 24 cities have changed from mayor council to council manager. So it's a substantial number. So clearly this is a valid question that we should address. We've got 150 signatures, people saying they want to vote on it. Putting it on the ballot then puts the question to the people to vote on, and then they can decide whether to change or not change it. It's not our job to decide that for them. It's our job to consider whether we're going to put it on the ballot or not. And I would like to move to instruct the city attorney to draft a resolution to place on the ballot in November of 2022, whether to change from the mayor council form of government to the council manager form of government. And I've got text that I found on MSRC that comes from the city of Bainbridge Island, which made this change in 2009. And so just sort of paraphrasing their resolution, it says a resolution of the City Council of Clyde Hill, or I'm changing from Bainbridge Island, a resolution of the City of Clyde Hill, City Council of Clyde Hill, Washington, providing for the submission to the voters of the city at the election to be held on November 8, 2022, of a proposition of whether the city should adopt the council manager form of government and abandon the council mayor form of government, and requesting the director of King County elections to conduct that election. I'm not married to that language, but my motion would be that the city attorney would craft a resolution that will accomplish that goal, and that we would have the opportunity as a council to vote on it either at our next special meeting at the end of this month, I believe it's 28th of June, or if that's not practical, then we could do it in July. The deadline for this happening would be August 2nd. So time is of the essence. Now, if we don't do anything, then the petitions can still go to King County, they can be validated, and then the measure can find itself on the ballot a year and a half from now. But I don't believe that that's responsive to what our fellow citizens are asking for, and that's why I'm making this motion. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore has made that said motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further, it's seconded. Discussion. Go ahead, Councilmember Muramoto. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that we're not, as a council, we're not proposing a change of government. We are making a resolution to allow city attorney to prepare the change. My rationale for this is that I very much would like to open the discussion up to the citizens of Clyde Hill. My concern is in a year and a half, there will be a number of changes, both to council and other things going on. And we may lose, I don't want to say momentum, but I want to keep the discussion going. I think it's important to listen to the citizens and to understand both sides of this issue. And to wait a year and a half seems to me like that is a long, long time. And as council, that's why I am very much in favor of drafting up the motion so that we can begin the discussion and proceed with listening to the citizens and have them put it to a vote in November. No matter what the outcome is, I don't have a clear sway one way or the other, but I really, really, really want to listen to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kamovich. Oh, you're on mute. It's all right. You can find it. It's only 4 a.m. where you are. Something like that. There it is.
One more time. I wanted to make sure I'm tracking what the motion is. The motion is not taking a position on anything. It is literally just making it is getting the item on the ballot for residents to discuss and vote on. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, it makes sense to me to ask the city attorney to prepare the resolution and to consider it the next time the council meets. I think that the description Councilmember Moromoto put forward, which is the community seems to have some strong opinions on this. At some level, this is something that I remember came up in training with MRSC. When you second a motion, it doesn't mean that you're for the motion. You're for discussing the motion. I think this is a great example of saying the community's clearly got some opinions about this. Getting it on the ballot is a good thing so that residents can have this conversation and speak up. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedman?
Do we know, well, the petition itself, it's now, I guess it's on its way to the county or about ready to go to the county for them to review. Do we know their timing and how they review the petition wording as well as signatures and when they come back with an answer?
Attorney Brubaker, you might be the best one.
This is a little bit of a confusing area, to be honest. It appears that the county verifies the signatures. I am unclear whether the county verifies the language in the petition, but I'm thinking the county auditor, that's who verifies signatures, does not verify the petition itself. Then the question comes to who does verify it. And I don't think it's the city or the city attorney that verifies it. It's the courts that verify it if it's challenged, as far as I can tell. But that's a preliminary or interim legal interpretation. It's not entirely clear.
Oh, okay.
And you're still working on that?
And yeah, I'm actively working on it. I've reached out to King County and I've kept the petitioners up to date, and I've been working with MRSC trying to figure out exactly how this process works. I have no idea how long it takes the county to review the signatures. But if the petition calls for an election at the general election in 2023, or the result of the petition is. I just would quickly like to point out that a couple of things to bear in mind. One is what I just said. If the petition is valid, if the signatures are valid, then one interpretation would be that the people who've signed it want the election in 2023. I'm not saying that's true, but that's one way to look at it. The other thing is that you have more than this upcoming general election in November. You have the special elections. There's one in February, April, and then the primary, I think I'm not sure when it is, in 2023. So you just for your information, you have four options before the general election in 2023. So there, that's it. If you have any questions.
That would go the petition route, verification, validation, and validation of signatures. The route that is currently, which we're discussing, goes strictly off of resolution, which would then land on the November 22nd ballot.
By state law, under the petition method, the election occurs at the next municipal election, which occurs in odd number of years. That's November 2023. If you do the resolution, then you can set it for any of the earlier elections. This coming, assuming you get it done in time, the upcoming general election in November, or any of the special elections throughout 2023, prior to the general election in 2023.
And I believe we heard Scott say he wanted it in the November 22nd.
Correct.
Just
and
November 8th, 2022 is the general election. My motion is to and on the ballot for that date.
And I do believe there's time to get it on the ballot in November.
But it sounds, Tom, like there's still more research for you to do.
Well, that's on the petition. One,
Not the resolution.
yeah,
Right, I understand.
yeah, so.
Okay.
Well, and I, just to finish where I kind of was moving on this was, it's, I mean, does it help us make a better decision, resolution or not, if we wait for you to come back with that information?
A couple of things. I may, that information may not be solid. In other words, we may not know. There may not be law on it. The statutes aren't clear. So we may never have a firm decision until somebody, challenges it in court or whatever. But I also want to be clear that if you move to have me draft a resolution tonight, then you would vote one more time on the actual resolution when it's presented to you, just in terms of.
The July
And
meeting.
then if that gets submitted before, I believe it's August 2nd, then that should be sufficient with the county to get it on the ballot in November.
Yeah, that's it. All right, Councilmember Jones.
Right. Okay, wow, this is, of course, a huge decision for the city to consider doing this. And it just can't be taken lightly. The city's been around for what, 69 years under its current form of government, and the residents have seemingly been happy with it. There's various potential motivations for an interest in making this change that need to be clarified, discussed, just like Councilmember Maramoto suggested. I'm all for talking about this. I'm just not thinking that this is something we should rush into, and make sure that we have the conversation before we move forward. And that obviously will be discussed if we prepare a resolution and talk about it at the next meeting. But I guess I was going to add, if this does get on the ballot in November, we owe it to all of our residents to make sure they and we, and that's the council, understands what we're getting ourselves into and how this is going to change the way this city operates. And for some, that may be the way they think it ought to be, and maybe from some others, separation of powers is an important thing. So everybody just needs to be clear on their motivation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore, I'm not sure if your hand was still up or if you needed a question.
I'm sorry, could I just ask Councilmember Jones one question? Because I just want to make sure I understood. There's an ambiguity in there. I wasn't sure if you meant rush forward or rush into the change of government or rush into the ballot, having a ballot item. I wasn't sure which one.
Good question. To me, it's rush into putting people on the spot of making a decision in 6 months.
Okay.
If it's going to be on there, we want to make sure everybody is clear about the motivations involved in this, what's involved in making such a change, and et cetera, for them to vote properly if we put it on the ballot. And
okay, thank you.
If we wait another year or to the next election that we choose, as council mentioned, there's a little more time to make sure that we have the conversation. I mean, we've got budget coming up. There's a whole bunch of other things involved in city business. This just adds another very serious element to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're still in the discussion point. Councilmember Moore, what's your hand still up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no, I appreciate the comments that people have made, and I just want to reiterate that my motion is for the city attorney to draft a resolution that would accomplish the goal of putting this onto the ballot in November. So putting the question to the voters of Clyde Hill. And I just want to remind you again, and I would encourage everybody to go reread the First Amendment, because this is a fundamental right of us as citizens in this country, is to petition our government for redress of grievances. We have 150 people. So, we can talk about motivations of individuals all we want. Got 150 signatures that have been collected by a small group of Clyde Hill residents who stepped up and, as part of their civic participation, believe this is a good idea. And I think they deserve, given that, to put it on the ballot. Obviously there's going to be plenty of time for a campaign for and against the measure, and who knows how it'll come out. But given this level of interest in making this change, I think it would be irresponsible if the city council did not put it on the ballot. So that's all I got.
All right, so barring any further discussion, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, again.
Could I ask, I'm sorry, could I ask that we go council member by council member?
That's no problem.
Thank you.
We have the resolution to work with the attorney to develop the resolution for this to go on the ballot for November of 2022. We would target, if you will, to have it done by the July council meeting, so it is accomplished before the August 2nd deadline.
Actually, my proposal was to have it so that we could review it at the study session on the 28th of June.
You said either study session or the council, but the regular council meeting, I guess the concern would be, gosh, Tom, I'm putting work in your pile, whether you can now accomplish this in less than 2 weeks.
Oh, I can. I mean, there's a whole lot of work in Clyde Hill. I know that I'm supposed to review the rules and guidelines, the draft rules and guidelines that council has put together. And I'm also supposed to review the planning commission's rules and guidelines. And then there are just a bunch of other things, but I can certainly prepare it by the workshop.
Thank you.
So council, this will be at now prioritizing this over the other priorities. I'm going to mention this to you because you're going to come back saying we have yet again not accomplished certain tasks because of a different priority now taking the workload. So I'm just pointing that out. So your approval of that is with that in mind. All those in, I'm going to go down the listing here. Council Member Friedman, your vote?
I'm going to abstain.
Council Member Moore.
Aye.
Council Member Muramoto.
Aye.
Council Member Jones.
No.
Council Member Hakamovich.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 2, 1 with 1 abstain. Attorney Tom Brubaker, that motion carries with that count. 3 to 1 with 1 abstain. Okay. That becomes your priority and the other ones get shifted down, Tom. We'll work with you. May I ask just for a 5-minute break? I think we have some people that might need to use the restroom. Just a quick 5-minute break, come back at 9:40 and we'll finish up the rest of the agenda, please. That be okay?
That's great.
All right, thank you.
Deal.
Okay, I think it's better if they just follow along the agenda. Okay, we're all coming back now. Hopefully we're getting them. I had to do a roll call first, hang on. We're empty on the Steve corner. trying to. Another there. If you get Steve, we just gotta have Steve come back.
Yeah, I have no idea what you guys can see either, so.
Do you want me to share? I have an actual PDF of the agenda. I'm just thinking that's probably hard to see. Are we?
You just need to take your thing and make it wider.
Yeah, how's it look on yours?
Small. Yeah, you can. Can't you take that column to the right there? And
I suppose I can go in.
just go to agenda.
Click on, or yeah.
In your packet.
Or
There you go. That works.
yeah. Councilmember Friedman, are you back? Have you fallen under your table? Well, I need to make sure we bring him back before we can continue on. So what are you showing now, Sean?
It's trying to load up the packet.
Oh. There he comes, yay.
Sorry.
All right, we're all back. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to consent agenda, items number 6. You have all those items in 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, or if you need to pull anything out?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Jones second.
Any discussion? Thank you. Seeing none, we will then ask for all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we will pass the consent agenda. Thank you. Administrative reports, we'll probably ask, hopefully you guys have done your homework and have read through those items, and probably just pull out any key important things that we need to draw your attention to. Otherwise, we'll have you ask questions or make comments on that. So Dean, under your admin reports, anything there to pull out?
Yeah, I had just the reminder that June 20th, Monday, June 20th is Juneteenth observed and city offices were closed. I also wanted to, we're going to talk about the 520 lid maintenance under the mayor, so I won't spoil that up. And then the only other item under there was that a couple of council members had requested a public records report, and that is included here. So I guess if anybody had any questions on that or wants me to elaborate there, I can.
All right. Any questions, comments for Dean?
Go
ahead.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't put my hand up, but Dean, is this a point to talk about the report that we're going to, or is that the separate, is there a separate review that I guess Greenwood wrote later, and it's in the packet?
This is the only time it's in the agenda.
Okay, because there was a report about costs and time and all of that. Isn't that correct? Is that what you want me to?
It's the public records memo 622.
Yeah. Okay. If that's what it is, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay.
If you look at the review, the mayor stated that John is spending 90% of his time on public records requests, which would be a concern. If you look at the information that's provided in that memo, I'm confused because I don't see where I don't see information that suggests he's spending 37 hours or 38 hours a week on the public records request. Now he might be doing it, but the information, if you kind of extrapolate the information, he might be spending 13 hours a week on that. If you kind of do a little bit of math in there based upon the time that's in that memo. So I guess it's clear that the need for this work is increasing, but I don't see it taking 90% of his work day. I see it taking 30% of it.
Yeah, I think.
So did I miss something?
Well, I think it was probably a little bit of a of a broad statement, but they have exploded exponentially, especially lately, and so it's not so much an exaggeration for like this week, for instance. So that's where we are, and we've already basically we have already basically hit the numbers through May that we have hit all of last year in a lot of cases here. So we're looking at some other areas. We're trying to look to emphasize some of our extra help here. And additionally, that it's highly, highly likely we're going to exceed that $100,000 threshold for 2022 reporting. And so we'll have additional reporting that'll need to go along with that. So
yeah, definitely some days and some weeks where that is clearly all that he's doing. If he has other priorities that are popping on, then he'll divert his attention there. It's a lot. Yeah.
Well, but that's all a lot now. I mean, the report it goes through May, and it doesn't make that case at all. So maybe so to me, the question would be, is this increase in requests temporary or permanent? And do we know that? That's part of my question. The other is, yeah, I get you're going to get to 100,000. The purpose of the report is to state to get information for best practices and efficiency reviews, what I read about. But I guess I'm still bothered. I mean, because this comment of 90%'s been made for a while now, and it doesn't sound like through May he was doing that.
Well, I mean, the number of records, if we're already meeting through May where we were for all of last year, the number has obviously gone up quite a bit.
I admit that. I agree.
Yeah.
But
I guess we probably ask because he's putting the hours down off of that.
I took the hours what he had, and in my analysis from looking at the number of complaints says he worked 5 hours a week on public records requests last year. Then you go back and look at the number of requests he's getting, and you extrapolate the numbers that are there. And I figure it's probably about 2.5 times more than he was doing last year.
So we haven't included like training time and different things like that. So we've been trying to ramp up the amount of things that we can do in-house rather than pawn off on Attorney Brubaker and Lighthouse's office to help keep some of the costs down.
Yeah.
On that end of it. So learning how to do more of the redacting and just general overall getting certified and training levels at the public records.
Let's go back and ask John for some further clarification on the hours. I think Councilmember Friedman's bringing up a good point there. Councilmember Hakamovich.
Yeah, I wanted to thank the administration. They pulled this report together and put into the packet on very short notice, and I appreciate that. I really wasn't expecting to see anything this month, and so I think that that's great. I think to the point of recurring or not, there's a monthly report in the packet around building permits, and there's a monthly report in the packet about enforcement, formerly complaints, but now enforcement. And there's been enough concerns expressed to me from residents around how long some requests are taking, what the lag time is, that I think transparency around, well, look, here are all the requests and here's why yours is taking this long, seems like a sensible, reasonable thing to do. I think I included, it didn't make it into the packet, the equivalent from Medina that does a very basic report of here are the requests that have come in and here's where the queue is and here's why your request is taking that long. And so I'm thanking the administration for getting this report in such short notice. And I think I'm asking for a report that recurs and is similar to the other two reports that we get from the administration on similar bits. Thank you.
We'll say, keep in mind with Medina, they have 29 staff. Please keep that in mind. Okay, Attorney Tom, I thought I saw your hand, but it's down. So, okay, we're moving on then. 7.2 building report, you see what Rich has put together. Rich, anything you need to highlight and or any comments for Rich?
No, we're just staying busy though.
Good.
You are.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Sean, you have Public Works report. Things to highlight or reinforce?
No, it's all in there. I mean, we have lots of normal work going on. One thing I wanted to point out was we had a kudos for Mr. Bender and Mr. Young from a resident who took the time to write letters to myself and to each of them. So that's always nice to see. Job well done. And again, guys have just been busy doing regular maintenance. So.
Is the Parks annual report fairly new?
No, the Parks levy report's been going on for a while.
Okay.
It's been at least since 2014-ish.
You just framed it to where it actually kind of drew my attention. I appreciate that.
Yep.
And then in your Public Works report is the 17 and 17 in there, right?
Yeah.
We promised council we would stay on top of that.
Yeah, so 17 is on similar track to the small drainage program. So the survey's complete. There's just some, they're working on design efforts. So
Do they have an estimate time?
not currently.
All right, so keep breathing down our neck. Comments, questions for Sean?
So how far off is it from, I understand last time you gave ranges and we all understand how ranges work. I'm not sure whether it's still in the same range or in a different range now.
I think I gave days of like a number of days. I still believe we're in mid-July maybe now for getting something ready, some documents ready, mid to late July. We're pushing our envelope quite a bit. And I don't know how that tracks to what we said before. It's pretty much once you get survey, there was a day time frame I think I gave, and I haven't not been tracking it that way currently.
Okay, thank you.
Then Lisa's out on paid time off or conference as well. So Dean, anything to reinforce on financial?
Yeah, I think that it was interesting to note that development revenue, Rich understated things a little bit. I think he's been a busy camper, and development revenue has caught up with budget expectations. So that's some good news.
Praise to him. Thank you. I know Councilmember Friedman, you're always so good with a question or a comment.
I do.
Yeah.
I do have one.
Okay, great.
It's actually, and maybe we need Lisa here. I was looking at the investment revenue, and I know in the investment income, and I know that we've got some of the investments coming to maturity to roll over. And of course, the economic news suggests that at least for the money we have, we can start making a little bit better interest rates down the road. So is there a plan to have an updated investment committee meeting so that we can review that?
Great suggestion. Do you know what?
That seems reasonable. I'll pass that on.
We will pass that on. Thank you.
Okay, Kim, we have a lot of work to do now.
Thank you. Alrighty. Moving on then to 7.5, Chief, anything to reinforce?
Nope. Hopefully the weather gets nicer at some point. We did have one nice day. We took the golf cart out, and I need to publicly apologize to Councilmember Jones because I promised him the first ride, and we actually got caught by him down in the preserve testing it out. So he will get the second ride.
Great.
Other than that, Yarl Point is moving forward with their 4th of July, so that's always a huge attraction for the Points communities, and we're excited to be involved in it again after a 2-year hiatus. So
great. And I do want to get credit. I know that we unfortunately have been seeing a lot in the media about shootings and school events and such like that. And I know that when I do my rounds, I had a good conversation with 2 of the officers and just kind of posed, what if? And what do you do if? And I was extremely impressed with their no hesitancy of what the procedures are and first person in and who's in control, and then kind of how the chain of command gets established and where they set up the boundaries and such. So, you know, unfortunately, you have to take these opportunities to ask ourselves, are we prepared? Are we ready? What if this was on our watch? And I know that your team does a lot of training, and I just want to give kudos for that.
In fact, last week and this week, the whole department is going through active shooter training specifically for schools and whatnot. In fact, I'm doing it on Thursday, so the chief doesn't get left out of this training either. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any comments or questions for the chief? All right, thank you for allowing us to kind of blow through those. I know they're all very important. I don't want to minimize your work and effort, but just trying to be sensitive to the time.
Nope, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, nothing under 8, nothing under 9. No, how dare I say that? Nothing under number 9. Let me see here. Tom, I might need your help because I don't know if I have the official verbiage unless somebody can help me out with it. To bring us into a official public hearing. Is it enough to say I open up us to a public hearing so that we can have the discussion around the ordinance to incorporate the new Department of Ecology stormwater manual requirements into the city's municipal code?
That's perfectly fine unless you want a staff report prior to opening the hearing.
Sean, do you need to do a staff report?
No, we have the presentation.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and do that, and then I'll officially open it for now. Thank you.
Got it. All right, good evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public who remain. This is Sean, City of Clyde Hill Public Works Director. What we have here is a public hearing on a stormwater ordinance, so a little bit of education on what we're up to on this. The city is subject to.
Hey, Sean, it's not, you're frozen on my screen unless my screen's the only one that's frozen. Are you guys seeing Sean's presentation?
Overview page?
No, you're not.
No.
You're not projecting, dear.
All right.
Maybe you can share your screen again.
Yeah, we'll try this again then. Nope, that's not it.
Yeah, choose the right PowerPoint.
There's a lot going on in here. No, that's not it either. Shoot. Bear with me one moment. I apologize. It's open right here.
Do you need Dean to project?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not giving me any options.
Dean, can you open up the presentation? One second. I have it. Do you want me to do it? Let me see if I can do it from here. Can we run from that? Can you run from there?
You sure can.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so everybody can see this now, correct?
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for bearing with us. So the first part is the overview. So again, the city has an active stormwater management program and is subject to the requirements of the Phase 2 NPDES permit, which is administered by DOE locally. Again, these are federal requirements, not really choices per se for us. Again, as far as requirements, as I mentioned, the two specific ones that are part of this public hearing will be related to adopting plans and best management practices and guidelines to meet stormwater requirements. So the specific sections are listed in the slide right there, S5.C.6 and S5.C.7. Again, there's a lot of words there, but it really pertains to adopting the most current version of the plan, which the city currently has adopted, the 2013 to 2018 plan. Please move on. Again, so what's changing is minimum maintenance standards. So we're aligning to the current permit cycle, and then also the current stormwater management manual for Western Washington. So a whole bunch of letters there and acronyms. But again, the city has adopted 2013 to 2018 guidelines, and we're just coming up to date finally for the 2019 to 2024 set, while they're working on the next set of updates coming up soon too. Please roll on. So specifically, the specific changes we're making are highlighted here on this slide. Again, it's updates to the current permit by year. It incorporates the Stormwater Maintenance Manual of Western Washington, because there's two documents here, the permit itself and then the maintenance manual. We also include all appendices by reference, and then also added the little bit of now enacted or subsequently amended, so that hopefully we catch some future versions thereof. And again, in section B, trying to say the most current version of the blank. So again, trying to open the door to keep us current rather than having to do public hearings in the future. We still likely will. So 1510A, again, very similar language, updating year, incorporating, and then also saying or subsequently amended. That way we don't have to do some of the smaller updates. Again, the city has an obligation to maintain our compliance with its municipal stormwater permit. These are requirements, they're not suggestions. There's no significant impacts that are really anticipated with this. Many consultants, developers, and otherwise are already familiar with the current plan and requirements, and many agencies have already adopted it. So, and we think that the language that we propose may assist in keeping us current. That is all I have for this public hearing portion and the education part.
John, what questions does council have? Questions or comments? All right, so now what I get to do, thank you, attorney, giving me the verbiage. So I'm not seeing questions or comments, not that you can't pop it back in. We're now ready to hold the public hearing on the proposed resolution. Anyone who wishes to speak to these proposed, this is the Department of Ecology Stormwater Manual requirements into the city's municipal code, is welcome to raise their hand or get my attention and make any comments or questions they may have. I will pause for a moment and open public hearing now in order to see if anybody wishes to make a comment. To be comfortable, a few second pause, just in case. All right, I am seeing none, so I will now officially close the public hearing on this, and we need to have, oh, we do that in the next section in 10, so I'll hold off on that. I'm one step ahead of myself. Okay. Then we're going to move on then to 9.2, which we have the transportation improvement plan. And Sean, would you like to share your key points on that?
Yeah.
And you need me to bring that up for you, or do you have it now?
I can try.
Oh, it's looking good. You got it. Just got to make it big.
It's a different one. Let's see if this is the correct one or not. All right. Can we see this one?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So again, I'll leave it out of present mode. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. Sean, City Clyde Hill Public Works, here to talk about Transportation Improvement Plan. This is an annual update, so not something out of the ordinary. A quick overview of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about requirements, the changes, the list, schedule, funding plan, and summary. It'll all be very riveting. As far as the requirements, again, the state requires that cities do an ongoing look and a plan, and then share that plan with other people regarding how they're going to improve transportation elements within their cities. So this is a state law requirement. It's a short-range plan document that can be modified as necessary, and again, at any time by the majority of the council. The TIP adoption dates are, it needs to be submitted no later than July 1st or within 30 days of any time that you do update it. Changes to this TIP. So again, I really made some changes in the layout. And so this is more of a tabular layout. It's a little bit more informational. I understand those are probably kind of small on your screen. one of the bigger changes that we made was really aligning to pavement rating. So it's an actual score versus failure type. I benefited from Transportation Improvement Board did a small city asphalt survey for Clyde Hill in August of 2021. So I am the beneficiary of very good and current information from them that established that scoring metric and really helps us kind of move away from a predominant failure type identification here. So it's going to give us better information on which roads to fix and why. I will say Clyde Hill's roads are really actually in very, very, very good condition, generally speaking. So again, some things I also added was categorization of activities. So rather than in the old tip, they were just kind of projects listed out there. We're going to start to look at categorization for sidewalk improvements, intersection improvements, some other items. And again, this aligns to a lot of funding programs. It'll help us make cases more clearly to funding partners in the future. Linking to comp plan goals, again, so each of the projects in the list have a link to the comp plan goals, which every project needs to be aligned to the city's goals and vision. And that's something we will continue in the future as we update the comp plan. Deconflicting with others, this is a very important step. So Bellevue is very much affects our operations and what's going on here, as does PSE and some other utilities. But that is one of the biggest pieces we've had is making sure that we're not putting down brand new asphalt where Bellevue wants to dig into it. And so many of our projects have actually been taken on by Bellevue, which again, we've been the beneficiary of. What we're looking at in this tip cycle is roughly $500,000 of overlays that Bellevue will be performing on our behalf, just from this year moving forward in the 6-year cycle that would have otherwise been projects in our program due to their pavement score. So one of the things I also use is average of estimates. I know that sounds really kind of strange, but I estimate it in a couple different ways. The city has traditionally estimated this on a square yard area-based calculation. I take that, and then I also use a tonnage calculation. So I'm kind of trying to test it 2 ways, and then making sure that I use the average of those estimates. And it gets even more complicated when we get more information. But again, I'll show you sometime if you want to talk about it. It's a ton of fun. So this is also a living Excel workbook. So something I try to do is in case I get abducted by aliens or I disappear one day, I leave breadcrumb trails. And so these kind of Excel spreadsheets have linkages to them. Somebody should be able to go and find out where I messed up or where I did something well. And again, it'll live, so we'll grow the spreadsheet as we move forward. So I can save a redundant somewhere else just in case. But again, this should really help anybody who picks this up or anybody who looks at this in the future understand where our thought process was. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. But again, people will understand clearly why. And it makes it easier to fix incorrect assumptions in the future. So the tip project list, as I mentioned, has these categories. How about that?
Here you go.
Non-motorized is typically sidewalks, bike lanes, channelization, some other improvements that have, primary benefits to not vehicles. We have a few of those on the list. One of the big ones that I've proposed is on the 20th Street sidewalk, and I understand that is the last remaining project, which had been on a 2011 sidewalk plan from the city. All of the other projects from that plan have been completed. 20th was the last one that has not, and it was on the program schedule for 2021, strangely enough, and I know it did get removed. I did put it back on the list again, thinking that it's an important project to improve at some point. There's also some items in here, and again, I know that I'm taking some liberties in proposing things that haven't had really great, robust discussion, but we have to have a place to start, and that's what I'm proposing with these. Again, the individual projects will win or lose based on City Council's priorities and their decisions. So again, some of those you'll see is the 86 and 96 streetscape, and you ask what that is, and really what it is it's redefining the road. Some people call them road diets. We have a really large width that is undefined, and we could probably use it a little bit better for defined parking space or defined joint use pathways that would benefit pedestrians and bicyclists. And then the benefit to that is you reduce your overlay width. So say you take 20% of your road and you make it into something else. Well, that deteriorates a lot slower than it does with traffic on it. So you're actually saving a little bit of money. You're utilizing the roadway width a little bit more, a little better, and providing new opportunity for people. street and intersections are typically your capital type projects. So this is the 84th of the world. This is the kind of place where we're going to be looking at some high dollar projects to make major improvements. And again, typically on 84th would be the major one to highlight there. We foresee that being a grant funded project. We'll have to find the right programs with the right capacities to help us to build it in the right way that we want. Preservation is the long list. So preservation is asphalt overlays, crack sealing, and other similar activities. One of the new requirements from TIB, which is one of our primary grant funding options, is that roads will have to have been crack sealed prior to being eligible for overlay dollars. So that is something that we're implementing this year. TIB is providing some funds this year. But again, any future road that we wish to ask TIB for money for to overlay, we will have to demonstrate that we had crack sealed it and perform preventative maintenance. And then maintenance activity is, again, another way to just find a place to correctly identify regular stuff that we do that's maybe not as capital, but something like signs and markings would be included. And we do have retroreflective requirements that we have to do sign upgrades and things like that. So that is the basis of the project list. We also provide this tip schedule. Again, this is a requirement of showing, okay, you told us what you want to do. Now, when are you going to do it? How are you going to accomplish it? So again, this is me taking liberties at programming out overlays on an annual basis. So you can see that is condensed into one line, but then these larger projects are spaced out. Some of them, and there's notes in that far right-hand column. Some of those are linked to preservation projects, so linked to an overlay year. And if you're going to overlay a road and you're going to channelize it anyway, well, then maybe you should take the next step and do some of those streetscape modifications. So those are opportunity-based projects that, again, you're trying to use money wisely one time and get the most bang for the buck. Funding plan. So again, all this stuff costs money. Money is scary. There's a lot out there, so it becomes difficult for people to talk about because other priorities as well. So what I looked at again in the tables there summarize it is the city has a very high historical level of funds budgeted for these types of projects. So looking at that summary, it was $1.35 million on average annual. Now that is a little deceiving as you have some pretty major years in there in 2017, 18, 19 with large amounts of grant funding involved, but I don't believe that we would be any different than that. But in any case, this TIP program would have a requirement of a little over $700,000 a year on this current estimate. Again, they're only estimates, they're planning level estimates. Things will almost certainly cost more than what it says, but it's the best at this snapshot in time. So we believe that, this is an achievable list. We don't think that it's, way out in left field or anything. The revenue sources that we can use are things like general fund. This city doesn't have a TIF or traffic impact fee, which you would typically allocate against development, nor do we have a transportation benefit district. So those are not funding options for this city. We do have REIT, and then we also have other grant programs. TIB is one of the easiest for us. PSRC is federal money, but larger pockets, but more complications. And then there's other programs that come up here and there. So again, this schedule serves as a guide and it is meant to be adjusted. We will find opportunity for some of these projects that might happen way out of order of what we dreamed. And again, getting them on the list is the important part, especially for the purposes of grant opportunity. So again, in summary, this tip is a listing of needs. So it describes of all the things that we can dream up. Let's put them on paper and let's get them there. Adoption of this does not obligate the city council to spend on a timeline or on an amount or in a certain year or on any given project. Again, this is just representing sort of the general desire of the city and how we think we might improve our transportation facilities into the future. So that is all I have for this presentation.
Plan, it's head and shoulders above clarity and around how you want community feedback to work. So this awesome was available to the public Friday night. It's Tuesday in Clyde Hill. You just presented it, so they've had a couple of days to look at it. You just presented it. There's going to be a public hearing, chunk of time, and then we're going to vote on it probably about 4 minutes after the public hearing closes. And so I'm not sure how to, like, I'm not sure if there's a better way, or if that's just the way everyone does it, or that's what the community should expect. So I'm just trying to figure out how public hearing and input plays into this, and how you think about that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely a better way. So I would like to see, I think some of the improvements we can make is some specific information pages on some of these projects. Again, the effort to kind of get it to where it is from where it was pretty extreme, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, before we go and dig dirt on, especially a project that is of significance, like dollar wise, or a real departure from our typical activity, I think we should be seeking more input. And again, this being an outline, it still doesn't obligate us to do anything. So having it on our menu or on our suite of ideas is doesn't hurt anybody. But I agree, especially if it's let's say 86 and we're going to propose to do something, we really should do a little bit more robust outreach prior to that occurring. So I don't think that fully answers your question. I acknowledge that, yeah, absolutely, we could do a better job. We need to do a better job on some of this advanced work, and I think we will get there. The comp plan, I can't stress enough how important this comp plan is going to be to this type of activity right here, because this is the comp plan. As we move through it, will set the stage for all of these projects, and it'll really define the will of the citizens and what they're looking for, and it'll give us the most clear guidance we could ask for. We're just not there.
Thank you. I was just to say thank you. Your answer makes sense. I understand how this is a step, and there's progression as commitments go to actually filling in that work and making it real. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to officially open up the public hearing on this annual adoption of the 6-year transportation improvement plan. Opportunity for anyone from our residents to make a comment or ask a question. So I'll give a few moments here to see if anybody wishes to raise their hand or speak up. Seeing none, I will then officially close the public hearing on the TIP. All right, so then we're going to move on to, as set up earlier, for section 10. So 10.1 is consideration of the adoption of the city's 6-year TIP. Sean, anything more to reinforce?
No, ma'am.
So I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second Steve.
Okay, I saw Councilmember Jones speak. I was reading lips. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye or nod your head.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And that passes unanimously. Good job, Sean. Appreciate that. And then on 10.2, this is a consideration of a motion to approve the ordinance regarding Title 15 and the stormwater requirements. Sean, anything further?
No, ma'am.
So may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And that passes unanimously as well. Good work, Sean. Appreciate that. Hopefully that gets us going. Yay. Okay, we're doing well, guys. Hang in there. We'll forge through on section 11. The first one there, 11.1, is I think the one piece I brought it up last month, but it is our continued work with our points communities on the 520 lid maintenance. We did send in a letter to the Washington State Department of Transportation. We have the link there. They were pushing for some quick resolutions and, quick sign-offs, and we're like, again, timeout. No, that's not going to happen that fast. We have strong concerns and reservations about how this is going. Credit to Mayor Harris at Yarra Point. She had some personal discussions with some of our representatives saying, we got to find funding sources and this is being thrown down our throats and this is not going well. And of course, Mayor Saby from Hunts Point is playing point on this. And you guys were okay with us signing on with our interlocal agreement with them in order for us to really have some strong felt discussions and clarity over what RCWs say or don't say, or interpretations thereof with our requirements to fund the 520 lid maintenance. It is a lot of money, and it's money that we're going to be owning and needing to do forever and ever. And so we really want to make sure that if we have to do this, that we have clarity, and that we really would like to do this with some level of money coming towards us to support it. I went on other meetings and such representing us and being super clear with some other representatives and WSDOT people, letting them know we were not happy with how this was going down. So I just want to keep you apprised on that, because this is going to be a bit of work, but we're forging ahead, and I appreciate our attorney also needing to give guidance and support on this one. Although we do have one main attorney that Mayor Saby is going to be kind of rounding up most of the major work. We just may need to have some level of oversight on that. Dean, did I forget anything to say, anything of importance there? Sounds about right. Council, do you feel like I'm keeping you apprised of this as best I can? You see all the memos there, so we're just trying to be transparent with our concerns and securing our funds if we can. I'll keep you apprised as we move forward. Okay. Moving on then, 11.2, Councilmember Muramoto, anything you need to reinforce? Oh, you're on mute. There you go. I'm not hearing you. Or is that me?
No.
Okay, you're okay.
I can't hear Kim either.
Okay, I can do a little sign language, not much. So do you feel like the information's in the memos and the packets? And if anybody has a particular question, you can email and you can get answers there. Okay. Thank you. The Sound Cities Association 11.3, you have the information off of PIC. The big change for us is that our Dawson has moved on, and so there's some Brian Perry will be taking over interim role for the SCA. It's going to be interesting because Deanna Dawson was such a leading force for that group. So I hope that we're able to maintain the stronghold that we've had and a good voice of all of us small cities competing with the Bellevues and the Kirklands and the Seattles and making sure that our needs are put forth. So anyways, let me know if you have any strong concerns off of what's off the political committee topic. Councilmember Friedman, anything from your other committee that you need to reinforce?
To reinforce the MISWAC, I think the issues can wait until the next meeting.
Okay, no worries. Great. And Councilmember Muramoto, are you okay on your WIRA 8? Thumbs up, I can see that. Okay, EMAC for 11.6 is what it is. So hopefully that's information that, you know, we're continuing on. Feeling really good that the zone coordinators are going to be setting up individual private meetings with us so that we get more direct impact from them. So that'll be great. Some major drills coming up. So that'll be helpful. We'll see. And the important part is that we're signing on as you head into the consent agenda to the regional plan, which is important, I think, for Clyde Hill to support. And then you see other items of regional importance listed there. Don't think, Dean, we needed to reinforce anything else, did we? Don't think so. That's the Puget Sound Regional Council. You see the topics there. And then the regional transportation plan. That was the one where I spoke on behalf of Clyde Hill, letting them know if you're going to put together a transportation plan, make sure you're securing funds for the maintenance of said transportation plan. So there we are. Any other questions or concerns for section 11? Seeing none, future agenda topics that we can make sure gets plugged into council meetings or study sessions coming up. I guess the one question I have, group, we've now are trying to get on the June 28th council study session, the resolution that you just motioned and passed this evening. I do not know the timing of that and or if it makes sense to join that topic with the required comp plan visioning exercise that we need to get accomplished. So I guess I would be interested in your thoughts on how we're going to get those done with the best bit of time. Comments so we can make sure our future agendas are plotting where we want things to occur. Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, I was just going to make a point about that. Since it already says resolutions, proclamations. So the resolution that that Attorney Brubaker is going to draft shouldn't be very long. So we've already kind of discussed it. I was just going to make sure that that gets on the agenda for the 28th meeting, and presumably that'll be a relatively short discussion and vote.
Okay. Are you guys finding that you would be okay topic-wise of going from that topic into then the comp plan visioning exercise, which will take, I think, a good hour and a half, I think. If I'm looking at how long the planning commission took, I'm going to guess it'll be about that time frame. And we'll make sure you get those questions ahead of time so you can do some thoughtful reflection and we can just plow through that and collect it.
It's no problem to me.
Okay.
Yep. I want to suggest, I think this is a comment that Councilmember Jones made. Given the number of things that we could be working on and how short and how scarce time is, it would be really interesting to figure out of all the topics at that council meeting, which ones we should front load or not. So no offense to proclamations and resolutions. I don't know if that's the best use of time or if there's some other topic that would be better off discussing there. Just throwing that out.
Yeah, we need to get to that at some point, but it's not urgent. And that also might come out of some level of discussion with our comp plan. You know, what we believe as values that drives our city. In most organizations that I've been associated with, the values help them drive what proclamations or resolutions the city wants to get behind. So, you know, we could look at the right timing for that. Okay, so we have that figured out for the June 28th, July 12th. We'll see what gets plugged in. And then we know that July 26th is the budget and the things that we talked about. Remember, that one might be a little bit longer. That might be a 6 p.m. start, just because there's lots to do on that. And then we will put a doodle out there for the retreat on the topic we talked about tonight. And then we'll go from there. Dean?
Are folks open to the idea of doing a retreat like during the day on a Friday or something like that, a weekday, or are we looking at weekend for dates?
Well, why don't we just throw a variety of options out on a doodle and we'll see what people are willing to.
Well, we find a facilitator.
True.
And they're
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we're gonna throw some dates out during the week. I know probably Councilmember Muramoto, I don't know. And Councilmember Moore, I mean, it might be, we'll just throw out some options and see what you guys can accommodate. Because if we're going to get a mediator, facilitator, we might need to get to more normal work hours, if you will.
Weekdays fine with me.
All right, we'll throw out some options and we'll see where it lands. Appreciate it. And that's just there. Anything that we need to capture from your guys' vantage point? Not that we won't capture it ongoingly, but just in case there was something on your mind right now. Okay. Seeing none, but you know where to find us, then a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hey, attorney, do we need to motion and second and a vote on adjourning?
No, you do not.
Thank God. All right. I motion we don't ask for a motion to adjourn anymore. How about that? All those in
Thank you.
favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. We'll change the practice going forward. All
Thank you,
right.
Mayor.
Thank you all for your time and energy.
And
Take
to all
care.
those, to all those citizens that stuck around, thank you.
Thank you all. Greatly appreciate it.
Enjoy your time there, Dean.
Thanks.
Yeah.